Chapter 1808. Bastard, you actually dared to destroy my true lightning body. I'll cut you into pieces. At this time, with a loud roar that shook the sky, a terrifying true dragon divine soul that was about 1,000 feet long suddenly appeared out of thin air. On the dragon's head, there was also a ferocious and resentful expression that looked like a human. Extremely terrifying. Once the true dragon divine soul appeared, everyone felt as if they were facing an ancient deity. It was so powerful, and its energy was much more powerful than that of a saint. It was like a god had risen, and it shook the entire starry sky. Its might shook the laws and grand Daos, and it seemed to be able to devour the myriad of worlds and make the myriad of people kneel on the ground. So terrifying. Is that the true dragon soul? Even the heavenly generals of the new heavenly courts, ancestral patriarch Shisha, Saint Anpo, and many other grand cultivators from the star ocean felt their divine souls and minds being suppressed. For example, Fu Heishui, Tu Fei, and the others fell to their knees. They couldn't control themselves at all. The human world, the deity realm, and the divine realm. Those were three completely different dimensions. Strictly speaking, they were three levels of energy. From low to high, the most powerful laws of the divine realm could kill normal nascent soul cultivators and easily crush sacred laws and deity laws, not to mention the most ordinary dharma laws. So, even a normal rabbit born in the divine realm could have the power of a soul formation grand cultivator. True dragons were divine beasts, the most powerful creatures in the divine realm. They rarely appeared in the deity realm and the human world. An adult divine beast could even fight with the giants of the deity realm and suppress the void return saints and Tao reunion perfected immortals in the central galaxy, not to mention the grand cultivators on the remote planets. Especially Tu Fei, Heishui Fu, Yun Zhongzi, and the others, who originally had the bloodlines of tiger beasts, divine bats, and cranes. The true dragon was the most powerful creature in the universe. In the ancient times, it had once swept across the universe and devoured the universe. Their ancestors had been slaughtered and their blood had dyed the starry sky red. So, that fear had been rooted in their blood and came from the depths of their souls. They couldn't resist it at all. The true dragon's body had already been destroyed and only its divine spirit was left. However, even its divine spirit was extremely terrifying. Its soul power was far more powerful than that of a void return saint and was comparable to a Tao reunion perfected immortal. How could they not be afraid? Even Zhao Xueqing's clone, who was at the deity level of the soul formation stage, felt that her divine soul was being suppressed. She was trembling in fear. Teacher, this is the divine soul of a true dragon. If I destroy it, you won't be able to find another one. Jiang Tian's face was extremely calm. He looked at the immortal emperor with a faint smile. Hee, that's fine. Give it a try. The undying emperor said calmly. The soul of the true dragon roared angrily, ignorant brat, how dare you speak such arrogant words? You want to kill me? I'm the soul of the true dragon of the god realm, and I've even killed Tao integration immortals. What's more, you're just a kid. Die. Then, it rushed towards Jiang Tian like a bolt of lightning and opened its mouth, trying to swallow Jiang Tian's divine soul. At this moment, everyone felt as if their souls had left their bodies. Even nascent souls and gods, as long as they had fused with their spiritual power, would fly out of their bodies and become food for the true dragon's divine soul. Alas! Alas, let's try using the art of the god realm. Jiang Tian heaved a sigh. He gently cast a spell and pointed his finger. A beam of light, which was dark and bright, was immediately shot out. It was mixed with countless true thunderbolts that could destroy everything. It was full of chaos and vitality, but also carried a domineering power that could destroy divine souls. Hongmeng's god-killing finger. That was a cultivation art that could only be mastered after reaching the god realm. It was no longer a cultivation art of the deity realm, it was supreme and powerful, capable of destroying all divine souls and soul energy. Jiang Tian was barely able to use it with his divine-grade nascent soul cultivator, but it was like a 3-year-old picking up a machine gun and shooting randomly. He could still kill a tiger. Rumble. At that moment, this ray of light annihilated space and even stopped time. Countless mysterious runes were engraved on its surface, revolving around it. Dazzling azure divine lightning appeared out of nowhere, gently striking the true dragon's divine soul like the finger of an ancient god. You want to kill me with this? The true dragon's divine soul sneered. He was in the state of a divine soul at the moment and his dharma power was vast. He could gather the spirit chi of heaven and earth and form an avatar at any time. Even if one avatar was killed, there would be thousands of more. But in the next moment, the light of chaos and lightning intertwined, like gangrene, instantly spread through an undetectable passage to the thousands of avatars of the true dragon's divine soul. The next moment, the foreheads of countless true dragon's divine soul avatars were crushed at the same time. Then, they immediately disappeared and died together. Hongmeng's god-killing finger specialized in destroying divine souls. Even if they were thousands of miles away and the galaxy was in their way, they would still be able to chase after them. If the true dragon's divine soul hadn't used the most overbearing 9 twists of the true dragon to escape to the edge of the solar system and destroy the last connection, his last avatar and divine soul would have died at the same time. Even so, the true dragon's divine soul was severely injured. It flickered between light and darkness, as if it were about to collapse. Master, this kid is using a cultivation art from the divine realm. His eyes were full of fear and he shouted in panic. His voice shook the world and he trembled. He wanted to turn around and run away, he didn't dare to go forward anymore. It's indeed a cultivation art from the divine realm. It has a hint of the grand Tao that can split the world and give birth to everything. Crack. Seeing this, the immortal monarch was so shocked that he took a step back. If this scene were to spread to the central galaxy or even the 9 heavens deity realm, it would cause a huge uproar and shock the entire galaxy. The immortal monarch, a giant in the deity realm, saw stars as small as bullets, crossed galaxies like a trickle of water, smashed stars with one palm, crushed sages like ants, and defeated perfected immortals like chickens. Such a mighty figure was actually scared by an earth cultivator in the middle of nowhere Milky Way. This was even more shocking than someone going through a tribulation and becoming an immortal. It could be said that this was something that had never happened in millions of years. But in fact, from the perspective of the immortal monarch, this reaction was not strange at all. The current Jiang Tian carried the memory and experience of his previous life when he dominated the human world, the deity realm, and the divine realm. That was unimaginable wealth and power. It was just like how a millionaire could not underestimate the son of a billionaire who had the right to inherit billions of assets. Although the current Jiang Tian was weak, his knowledge and divine sense were unfathomable. Even if the immortal monarch was 100 or 1,000 times stronger than him, Jiang Tian, with the experience of his previous life, especially in the divine realm, had the advantage of foresight and foresight. It was not impossible for the weak to defeat the strong. Master, do you believe it now? Jiang Tian swung his sleeves and stood with his hands behind his back. His face was cold and indifferent. Even in the face of the immortal monarch, he was not weaker. I believe it. The immortal monarch frowned and finally nodded. Although he had 1,000 questions about the reason for Jiang Tian's reincarnation and rebirth, he had to believe it when the facts were right in front of him. Master, may I know why you came to Earth? Jiang Tian nodded slightly and asked knowingly. The immortal monarch no longer had his original arrogance and indifference. Instead, he smiled warmly and said, Xueqingxue is very beautiful. She has the rare immortal body of the pure phoenix. This old man wants to bring Xueqingxue to the Hangyu celestial sect and accept her as my disciple. With your help, she is already a deity-level divine transformation realm cultivator. Her foundation is very solid. In the future, she may be able to become an immortal and step into the deity realm. Hearing this, everyone's expression changed again. Chapter 1809. Take Fairy Xueqing away. She has a chance to become a deity. The deity realm of the 9 heavens. This is a great opportunity. Yeah, an opportunity to become a deity is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So, the so-called opportunity to become a deity on Earth isn't referring to the spirit chi or the universe treasures, but now. Everyone's expressions were different, and their reactions were also different. For a time, they were all using their divine senses to discuss and exchange their opinions. The existence of the deity realm of the 9 heavens was indeed a fact for Jiang Tian. However, it was only a legend for the grand cultivators in a remote planet region like the Milky Way. No one had ever become a deity in history, and they couldn't even confirm the existence of the deity realm of the 9 heavens. However, after hearing the conversation between Jiang Tian and the immortal monarch, they were certain that the deity realm of the 9 heavens existed. The immortal monarch was able to kill a true dragon, extract its soul and summon the 9 heavenly thunder. What else could he be if not a real deity? Congratulations, Fairy Xueqing. Congratulations, Taichu Divine Lord. You've met your master and have a chance to become a deity. You'll be able to live forever and live as long as the world. Old ancestor Shisha bowed towards Jiang Tian and his wife. As she spoke, her deep demonic vertical pupils also revealed a deep envy and a burning passion. Bai Jianzhen, the deity-grade nascent soul of the Beidu sect, was taken away by a grand cultivator from the central galaxy. Her master wasn't even a grand cultivator from the 9 celestial sects, but only a grand cultivator from a sacred ground. Countless grand cultivators in the little Tiannan planet region were envious. The Star Ocean was shocked when the news was spread. The grand send-off ceremony was also a ceremony where thousands of stars came to pay homage. The mighty figures of the endless sea of stars sent generous gifts as a send-off. As for Bai Jianzhen's sect and clan, one of them had ascended to become a Big Dipper powerhouse and was on par with the Ice Drake ancestor, Han Ke. And then, the person who was taking Zhao Xueqing away wasn't a grand cultivator from the central galaxy, but a powerhouse from the deity realm. The opportunity and benefits involved were 1,000 times better than what Bai Jianzhen had encountered. Jiang Tian's expression was neither sad nor happy, and there was no change at all. However, he had already confirmed the guess he had for a long time. Sure enough, when the immortal emperor came to Earth in his previous life, he didn't want to take him away, but Zhao Xueqing. Zhao Xueqing shook her head and refused. Senior Dizun, my husband, daughter, and relatives are here. This is my homeland. I want to protect this place. Idiot. Seeing this scene, the immortal emperor revealed a somewhat benevolent expression. He shook his head and sighed. You are at the deity-level divinity transformation stage, and your husband, Kang Teichu, is at the divine-level nascent soul stage. Although the spirit chi in this place has recovered, it can only support you to this realm. It will be difficult for you to advance even an inch in thousands of years. He immediately used his divine sense to transmit the scene of him exterminating Big Dipper to everyone. I've already exterminated the Big Dipper galaxy. From now on, I will protect the solar system. No one will dare to offend and trample on it anymore. This can be considered as resolving your worries. Everyone's consciousness immediately saw the images of the 7 stars of the Big Dipper being destroyed. All of them were so shocked that their souls almost left their bodies. Oh God! No wonder he dared to ignore Han Ke, the ancestral patriarch of the ice dragons. He really did exterminate them. This must be the doing of a giant from the deity realm. He destroyed a star and spread fire across the entire galaxy. If he isn't a giant from the deity realm, what is? That's right. Such power is definitely not something I can imagine. So, the legends about becoming a deity and the deity realm are all true. I can die without regrets now that I've seen it today. At this moment, everyone no longer had any doubts. Even the last bit of doubt was gone. Some old soul formation stage cultivators who were determined to become deities trembled with tears running down their cheeks. Seeing that Jiang Tian was still expressionless, Saint Anpo persuaded him with a sincere expression. My friend, maybe you'll be separated from fairy Xueqing for a few hundred years, but the lifespan of a cultivator is different from that of an ordinary person. Compared to your lifespan of thousands of years, it's just a short moment. Don't lose the big picture because of love. He spoke from the bottom of his heart. If Zhao Xueqing had the immortal monarch as her backer, she would be extremely powerful and famous across the galaxy. She was already talented and had an extraordinary deity bone. If she had the immortal monarch, who had already ascended to the deity realm, as her master, she would have a high chance of becoming a deity. Not only would Jiang Tian and his wife benefit greatly, but the entire planet region would also be completely safe. There would be no more chaos, no more wars, and no more deaths. The entire mini-southern sky star region would end its state of war and form a united star region with Earth and the solar system as the core. But then, everyone in the new heavenly court and Tianqing school suddenly felt something was wrong. Why didn't Jiang Tian say anything? Dignity. Right. Ever since Jiang Tian rose, he had always been unafraid of the changes in the world and his ancestors. He could only be himself and disrespected the deities in the world. Since when was his destiny controlled by someone else? They used to be a family, but you took them away just like that. What a joke. Is Tai Chu going to refuse? If he doesn't, the entire planet will be destroyed once he starts a war with the immortal monarch. Ancestral Patriarch Shi Sha and Saint Anpo's expressions changed drastically. They became nervous and wanted to run away. Sure enough, Jiang Tian said with a half-smile, "Senior, are you sure you want to take my wife away?" Although Zhao Xueqing was also trembling, she still held Jiang Tian's hand tightly and said, "Senior, how can you take someone as your disciple by force? If you force our family to be separated from the galaxy forever, I won't do it even if I have to self-destruct. I'm not taking her away. She doesn't belong here in the first place." The immortal emperor sighed meaningfully and shook his head. Then, he said seriously, "You've protected Xueqing to an unprecedented level with your experience in your past life. I have to repay your kindness. Why don't I take you as my last disciple and teach you cultivation arts? You'll be another pillar of the central galaxy in the future. Take me as your disciple." Hongmeng's god-killing finger. Do you know that? Jiang Tian smiled disdainfully, but there was a murderous look in his eyes. He had lived 2 lives, and in his previous life, he had cultivated hard for 10,000 years before finally ascending to the position of Hongmeng god. He had gone further than the undying monarch, and his knowledge was broader and deeper than his achievements. Putting aside his cultivation, he had mastered more cultivation arts and divine powers than the immortal monarch. After his rebirth, he had the advantage of foresight. He knew about the deity materials that were about to appear in the central galaxy, the rising deities and even the deity emperors in the human world, and many dirty secrets of the deity realm. This was not something the immortal monarch could compare with. Kang Te-chu, don't be ignorant. The immortal monarch's face froze. He then flicked his sleeves and said, "A divine-grade nascent soul is indeed impressive. But I've also killed a lot of nascent soul cultivators and true gods from the deity realm." How terrifying was the anger of the deity realm. Countless Dharma laws collapsed in the sky and grand Daos were annihilated. There were black holes, as if the world were about to be destroyed. Many of the soul formation and half-saints present were suppressed to the point that they couldn't even breathe. He's going to rob us. Isn't he a giant of the deity realm? How can you be so unreasonable? Tang Linglong, Sasaki Haisha, Bai Mushua, Long Xingnan, and the other disciples were dumbfounded. Was this the cruel truth of the entire universe? Even if one became a deity, the bigger fist was still the law. Chapter 18:10. Do you really think you can scare me off with your immortal divine powers? The immortal monarch calmed down and said calmly, "I have so many divine powers. I'm just afraid that killing you will affect Xueqing's Taoist heart. That's why I'm being lenient. You should know your place. Senior, if you dare to take me away and separate me from my wife, I'll explode myself." Zhao Xueqing's doppelganger also shouted. Her beautiful eyes were filled with murderous intent and endless determination. What a pair of idiots! The immortal monarch's face was filled with anger, as if he was angry at their incompetence and lamented their misfortune. The mortal world, wife, children, and parents are all dreams and illusions. They're just stinky skins. If you have the ability to understand, you should know that the fruit of marriage is nothing in the end. Pink skeletons and handsome skins are all the fetters of the devils. The real immortal cultivators pursue immortality, transcend the world, and live forever. I love these pink skeletons and the fetters of the mortal world. So what? Jiang Tian took a step forward and faced the immortal monarch. He did not show any sign of weakness. We don't want to live forever. We don't ask for an afterlife. We don't care about the past. We only want to live a vigorous life. We don't want to be tied down by you. We don't want to be your pawn. If you control my fate, what's the point of living? You're so stubborn. Don't stop me. I don't mean any harm by taking Fairy Xueqing away. I just want to teach her the great way and bring her to the immortal world. I'll train her with all my heart. The immortal monarch did not wait for Jiang Tian to respond. He grabbed Xiao Xueqing's doppelganger with his palm. Although his palm was ordinary, it filled the world as if it was the hand of an immortal emperor from the 9 heavens. It froze the void within 100 feet of Jiang Tian. Even the primordial qi wind and clouds could not move. It was the power of the immortal world, a supreme forbidden spell. Ancestor Shi Sha and the others could not even move a finger. They were all shocked. They did not expect such a mighty power to exist in the world. Break. Jiang Tian raised his eyebrows and spat out a word. As soon as this word was spoken, it was instantly like the chaos had exploded, and the universe was born. It was filled with the might to split the heavens and the earth apart and sweep through the myriad of worlds. Roar! Inside the spirit embryo, the divine infant glared at the immortal emperor with eyes full of hatred. It raised its head and roared. Jiang Tian activated the primal chaos creation scripture to the extreme. The power of his divine body, divine infant, and divine rule merged into one. Behind him, 9 phantoms of divine rule soared into the sky and turned into chaotic rays of light that bombarded the immortal emperor. The divine infant was made entirely of gold. It was only about 7 to 8 inches in size, but it had 9 orifices. There were eyes on its forehead and navel, making it look like a divine infant that had descended from the 9 heavens. Clang! Jiang Tian's blow had crushed tens of thousands of Tao and shattered the Dharma. Its vast and surging power was enough to blow up an asteroid, but it only bounced the immortal emperor's giant hand 100 meters high and formed a protective shield that covered the hall with a radius of several hundred meters. He couldn't protect more, otherwise, the divine rule of the primal chaos wouldn't be condensed enough to withstand the second blow. Within this safe range, ancestral patriarch Shi Sha, Saint Anpo, and many other grand cultivators from the Star Ocean suddenly found that they could move their hands and feet again. Why are you so stubborn and struggling, my young friend? Everyone below the deities of the 9 heavens is like an ant floating in the clouds. No matter how strong your divine infant is and how powerful your cultivation is still weak. You can't withstand my second blow. The immortal emperor's expression didn't even change as he spoke casually. But he didn't show any mercy when he attacked. With a backhand slap, it was as if the world had been turned upside down. As the ancient heaven-flipping seal struck, wisps of purple chi suddenly emerged from his body and filled the world. The purple chi of the deity world. It was a kind of spirit chi in the deity world. If used for nourishment, a wisp of it could create a soul formation cultivator. If used for killing, a wisp of it could destroy a star. Purple chi gushed out from the immortal emperor's body like a purple nebula. It was incomparably dazzling, and in the blink of an eye, it merged into his fingers and palms, turning into incomparably condensed crystals. His fingernails shone like purple immortal crystals, and once again, he clawed at Yiqingyu. When he clawed at Chen Fan, terrifying space cracks appeared where his fingers touched. They were extremely deep, like black holes, as if they could even tear the world apart. Kill! Jiang Tian's eyes widened in anger. He roared and patted the sky-devouring demonic gourd at his waist, summoning the myriad stone cauldron. The myriad stone cauldron was filled with chaotic chi, and the primordial aura of everything was flowing. Many grains of galaxy crystal sand on the cauldron sparkled like a star. You can't control my fate. The earthly dragon clone turned into a 10 feet tall man with a dragon head and a human body. He was covered in countless scales and his eyes were demonic. The dark yellow earth divine law lingered around him. He flashed out from behind Jiang Tian and raised one hand. Then, he jumped up like a king carrying a cauldron over his head and smashed at the giant purple chi hand. As for Jiang Tian himself, he maintained the safety shield with a determined look on his face. He looked coldly at the earth-winged dragon and the immortal monarch soaring into the sky to protect Zhao Xueqing and his fellow cultivators. Bang! An earth-shattering sound came from 10,000 meters high in the sky. A crack appeared on the undying monarch's massive palm as it was knocked off course again. The Taichu Heavenly Pavilion, on the other hand, was knocked back several thousand meters. The ground trembled as terrifying fissures hundreds of miles long appeared, just like the Grand Canyon of East Africa. The clouds in the sky above Sidoni within a radius of thousands of miles were swept away. Earth, which was dozens of times larger than before, was shaking violently. The Dharma laws and great Taos that were dozens of times stronger than before couldn't resist and cracked. At this moment, the mountains crumbled and the earth cracked. Towering mountains that were several thousand feet tall were instantly flattened. Terrifying earthquakes, tsunamis, and hurricanes erupted in an instant. Terrifying huge waves that were several thousand meters tall were set off on the surface of the sea. It was as if the sea had dried up and the rocks had crumbled. One after another, the aircraft carriers were overturned like small dinghies. If it wasn't for the mythological alliance reminding all the inhabitants of Earth to hide in bunkers when the undying sovereign arrived, and these bunkers were designed by Zhang Qinzhen and designed by Jiang Tian and the Tianqing sect, which had extremely strong defensive capabilities that were comparable to Tao artifacts, millions of people would have died. Clang! The myriad origin cauldron was shaken until it spun around in disarray. Terrifying cracks appeared on its surface. The undying emperor reached out with his big hand and grabbed it in his hand. Bang! The thick earth-winged dragon clone was sent flying 1,000 miles away. The moment it landed, the earth cracked open and spread out in all directions. Intense crashing sounds rang out incessantly. Mountain after mountain collapsed. The thick earth-winged dragon was struck until it was 3,000 miles deep into the ground before coming to a stop. It's seriously injured. The Grand Primordium's cauldron was also taken. Ancestor Shisha was dumbfounded. Although she was suppressed by the immortal monarch's celestial realm purple chi and the great way of law, her vast divine sense vaguely sensed that the thick earth-winged dragon's skin and flesh were torn open. Grand Primordium, don't fight anymore. Your teacher is too powerful and his cultivation arts are too profound. You're no match for him. Anpo Saint tried his best to persuade him. His body trembled and he was about to cry. It wasn't that he wanted to break down Jiang Tian's will to fight. He truly couldn't understand why Jiang Tian was so stubborn. Why did he refuse? Why did he not hesitate to risk his life to fight? It was clearly an enormous fortuitous encounter, and he should have accepted it readily and been deeply grateful. The heavenly generals of the heavenly court and the disciples of the Tianqing school were speechless and looked extremely serious. Their confidence in Jiang Tian had been shaken. The power of the deity realm in 9 heavens was too terrifying. The distance between Jiang Tian and him was like the difference between a mortal and a cultivator. Return. Jiang Tian's face was as cold as iron and he didn't say a word. The thick earth-winged dragon stomped its feet and pierced through the vast earth. In the blink of an eye, it arrived behind Jiang Tian. Its eyes were filled with rage, and its battle intent was soaring into the heavens. Its dragon blood was boiling. Chapter 18:11. Kang Te Chu, you should thank me. I was the one who brought this cauldron of creation to the deity ground and gave it to Emperor Zhongli. Zhao Xueqing also transferred your luck to you, so it fell into your hands. You would have died if it weren't for this treasure. The immortal monarch chuckled and grabbed the immortal will imprint on the cauldron of creation. He then took it into his hand and played with it. You want me to thank you? Jiang Tian snickered and said, you did leave this treasure behind, but you're the one behind the arrival of planet destruction, aren't you? Indeed. The immortal monarch didn't deny it. He nodded and said without changing his expression. But you can't blame me for that. The deity ground and the ancient earth were places I'd carefully cultivated. I sent this cauldron of creation to the deity ground, hoping that the deity ground would stabilize the three worlds. Unfortunately, Emperor Zhongli was useless and the Golden Crow ancient emperor was muddle-headed. Because of the conflict between the West Land, the deity ground and planet destruction, as well as the cleansing in the heavenly court, the deity ground was shattered. He belittled himself and attacked the sun, using it as a broadcast to the void returning and Tao reunion civilizations. It attracted the heavenly fiends from the Beta planet region, which disrupted my plan. I was too disappointed in them, so I could only send a planet destruction from the deity realm to clean them up. He was a very arrogant person. Even Emperor Zhongli and the Golden Crow ancient emperor, who were famous in the star ocean in the deity ground, were like 3-year-old children to him. But nobody thought it was inappropriate, because he was too powerful, much more powerful than the ancient virtuous cultivators of the deity ground. Clean them up. Jiang Tian sneered and said, do you know how many people died when planet destruction arrived and caused the decline of the heavenly court and the ancient earth? Everything in the world nourishes people, but no one is kind. How can we repay the heavens? So what if I kill them all? The immortal monarch snickered. But you were the one who attracted the annihilators, right? Jiang Tian said in a deep voice. I've been to the Thunder Lock realm before, and the ancient celestial court's wandering army had encountered the annihilator. The annihilators were the greatest enemies of the god, immortal, and human realms. Even the supreme demons of the demon realm viewed them as mortal enemies. As a giant of the immortal world, why are you colluding with the annihilator? Besides, Shang Emperor Zhongli and Ao Emperor Wuchang had already started to wander in the deity ground. They didn't care about your planet destruction plan. Why do you have to kill them all? So what if we kill them all? The immortal emperor's face was indifferent and emotionless, just like the great Tao of the heavens. Shang Emperor Zhongli, Ao Huang Wuchang, Golden Crow ancient emperor, and the others are too useless. In fact, they had already reached the void return stage at that time. They could have crossed the star ocean and even entered the central galaxy by themselves. However, they were so attached to the mortal world that they had to create a deity ground to wander around. They pushed the deity ground and the worlds to the South Gate star. You might have already known that the planet destruction plan didn't only involve the solar system. The South Gate, Ophiuchus, Fomalhaut and other planets were also involved. We hadn't completed our plan back then. There were still some grand cultivators and saints hiding in those planet regions. If they learned about the planet destruction plan from Shang Emperor and the others, they would have understood it in time and escaped through the star ocean. Although I can capture them one by one and throw them back into the cage, it will take a lot of effort. So, I might as well give them a galactic anchor, and let them kill Shang Emperor Zhongli, Ao Huang Wuchang and the others. That's good. After 100,000 years, the heavenly South Star area has become a graveyard for immortals and demons. Even the grand cultivators and saints didn't manage to escape. They were nourished by the great Tao and the grand array in the starry sky to nourish Earth. After 100,000 years, the spirit chi of ancient Earth has recovered. There was a lot of information in those few sentences. Everyone's mind almost went blank. They needed to digest it and couldn't come back to themselves for a long time. The graveyard of deities and demons. The world cage. The universe anchor attracted the annihilators. The grand cultivators turned into the great Tao to nourish Earth. According to legends, the heavenly South Planet region used to be very prosperous and had Tao reunion perfected immortals, even though it wasn't as big as the central galaxy. However, it had gradually declined in the last few 100,000 years. Saints were only legends and half-saints were already at the top. At this moment, only the heavenly generals of the ancient heavenly courts were still on the same side as Jiang Tian. The attitude of many cultivators from other planets suddenly changed. The stars dimmed, the grand cultivators died, the saints turned into Tao and the planet regions withered. And yet, Earth got all the benefits. It made Kang Te-Chu and his wife what they are now. But why? If we have the chance, we should also get a share. We can't let Kang Te-Chu take all the benefits. A seed of resentment was planted in the hearts of Saint Anpo and ancestral patriarch Shisha, which could grow into a towering tree. Jiang Tian also noticed their changes and sneered in his mind. That was how people were. They feared power but didn't care about virtue. Even old monsters who had cultivated for tens of thousands of years were no exception. In fact, all of this was set up by the immortal Lord and the other giants of the celestial world. What did it have to do with Earth? However, they were afraid of the immortal Lord and didn't dare to offend him. They couldn't wait to worship him. Although Jiang Tian was powerful enough to kill them, they felt that Jiang Tian had a bottom line, unlike the immortal Lord, who could easily crush stars and destroy planets. So, they suddenly had evil thoughts. However, Jiang Tian didn't have time to pay attention to them at the moment. He looked at the immortal Lord and said, "Senior, you've painstakingly turned the heavenly South Planet region into a desolate place. Why? Extinction is for a better longevity. The withered planet regions are for the grand occasion of today's rebirth. Earth is a base that you can't imagine, and that's even more powerful than the gods of Hongmeng. I'm just following orders. I'm just a small screw in the giant wheel of the heavenly path." The immortal Lord sneered and said leisurely, "Kang Te-Chu, you were a Hongmeng god in your previous life, but you don't know the truth of the great way of heaven and earth. Compared with the great way of heaven and earth, the sea of stars is just a drop in the ocean, and civilization is like a passing cloud. You don't know how virtuous my plan is. You're only concerned about the safety of a small corner of the world. You're too short-sighted. Think about it carefully, think about it again, think about it a lot more. You won't stop me from taking your lover away today. There's nothing to think about. You can't take him away." Jiang Tian shook his head gently. His fighting spirit rose steadily and soared to the sky. "Fine. You're an ant trying to shake a tree. You've exhausted my patience. So what if I kill you? I can erase her memory even if her divine sense is severely damaged. She only remembers that I'm her teacher. She doesn't remember that she once had a loving husband." At this moment, the immortal Lord's patience seemed to have been exhausted. He ignored Zhao Xueqing and flicked the giant purple hand toward Jiang Tian. Chapter 1812. It was a light flick, but it felt heavier than a planet. After flicking his finger, the immortal emperor stared at Jiang Tian with eyes as cold as the coldest glaciers in hell without any emotion. In the eyes of the people on Earth, the immortal emperor seemed to be above the 9 heavens, stepping on the sun and the moon, like an invincible deity emperor. Jiang Tian, on the other hand, was like Seymour, who had overestimated himself and repeatedly lifted the boulders that the gods had thrown down. He looked heroic, but there was also a trace of helplessness in his actions. It was a tragic scene of life and death. The purple deity Qi of the deity world surged and instantly shattered Jiang Tian's chaotic shield. "Break!" Jiang Tian roared. He formed a hand seal and gathered all the divine laws in his body between his fingers. Whoosh! It was as if the chaos had been split apart and yin and yang had been split apart. A chaotic saber light slashed heavily on the finger like a saber cutting through water. Bang! Jiang Tian spat out a mouthful of blood, and his body flew out heavily. Crack! Crack! The crisp sound of bones breaking was heard. Jiang Tian's body was shattered and even his spirit embryo was broken. The 9 orifices of his divine infant spurted out blood. The attack didn't slow down and penetrated the Taichu heavenly pavilion. The Aramba heavenly pavilion was torn to pieces. Many cultivators and mortals either transformed into ferocious tigers, flood dragons, and flying cranes, or used heaven-defying movement techniques to leap up and down like grasshoppers. They stepped on the wreckage and debris as they fled in all directions. "Husband!" Zhao Xueqing cried with tears in her eyes. She stepped into the air and rushed towards Jiang Tian. "My child, he's fine. He's your husband and he's extremely talented. How can I kill him?" With a seemingly benevolent smile, the immortal emperor waved his purple hand and caught Zhao Xueqing at an incredible speed like a bolt of purple lightning from the immortal realm. Then, he said with a smile, "I've restrained the purple aura from the immortal realm. Otherwise, if even a wisp of it leaked out, how could the people in this iron lump survive?" Zhao Xueqing's clone couldn't break free. She ignored him and only looked at Jiang Tian with tears in her eyes. "I'm a divine-grade nascent soul cultivator, like the child of a true god. I won't let you take her away, old man." Jiang Tian's eyes were cold. He stepped into the air and flew hundreds of miles away. Suddenly, he took out the absolute heaven sword and slashed at the immortal emperor. The sword light that was like a torrent was completely condensed from the chaotic divine laws. It was dazzling like a ray of light, and it obliterated the laws and shattered the grand Tao. This is the Taichu's most powerful Dharma treasure, the heaven-severing sword. This may be the last hope for Fairy Xueqing. At this moment, ancestral patriarch Shisha, Saint Anpo, and the other cultivators from other planets were shocked and frightened. That sword was too powerful. It seemed to have the power to cut the galaxy and wipe out the universe. They knew that if they faced it, they would have no chance of escaping. Whoosh! The immortal emperor didn't move. But when the sword aura was 100 feet away from him, it suddenly shattered like a piece of glass hitting steel. It was like a cup falling to the ground and exploding. Whoosh! In that instant, countless streaks of sword light shot out in all directions, piercing through layer after layer of space and turning the area within a radius of several thousand kilometers into a storm of swords. Some cultivators even stood a few thousand miles away, thinking that they were far away from the battlefield and wouldn't be involved. But then, a sword aura flew over and cut his body and golden core into pieces. He was a peak stage golden core cultivator, but he couldn't even block a broken sword aura. There were more than 10 million of such sword auras. In an instant, dozens of cultivators couldn't dodge in time and died. Seeing this, Zhao Xueqing's face changed. At that moment. The smiles of all the cultivators who saw this froze on their faces. Even ancestral patriarch Shisha was frightened and looked desperate. Saint Anpo smiled wryly and shook his head. "No, the gap is too big. He's still a powerhouse of the deity realm. You want to use us as pawns? Even if you don't mean any harm, Kang Te Chu won't allow it. My fate will never be manipulated by others." Jiang Tian roared and slashed out with his sword again. The immortal emperor's eyes remained calm, as if he was looking at a lowly ant baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. "Kang Te Chu, do you know that I gave them the heaven-severing sword? Otherwise, how could those people from Zhongli have the ability to use the heavenly art?" Suddenly, the undying emperor snorted coldly and moved again. He turned his palm into a fist and raised it up high. Purple energy gushed out and 9 heavenly lightning surrounded it as he smashed down heavily towards Jiang Tian. Crack! The heaven-severing sword shattered into countless pieces and the purple thunderbolts kept running around it. Jiang Tian spat out a mouthful of blood as he was knocked flying. However, he burst out laughing. His body continued to break into pieces. He said in a frenzied and unyielding tone, "Old fart, if you dare to take her away, I'm going to destroy your sect, the Hengyu Immortal Sect, the 9 heavens, and behead you." "Kang Te Chu, stop it. It's not that I can't kill you, but I've shown mercy several times. I didn't kill you because Zhao Xueqing's heart of cultivation is flawless." Secondly, I saw that you have a good foundation and it's not easy to cultivate. You're still useful. The immortal emperor's eyes were cold and indifferent. I can spare your life, but destroying the worlds of the solar system and the South Gate planet region is just a matter of command. Do you really want to try? The next moment, the great path of the deity realm was strangled. Suddenly, a terrifying sound that shook the entire sky was heard. That was the last sound of a planet and a world. Everyone saw that there was suddenly a sun in the sky. Its light was blazing and the light of destruction was extremely dazzling. The temperature on the side of the earth that was facing the fire suddenly rose and the trees were scorched and even caught fire. The heavenly world is destroyed. Countless people exclaimed. Such ruthlessness and venom. He destroyed a planet and killed billions of people with a word. How can he be a giant in the deity realm? Especially Lucifer, Yi, Xiaoman, and the others who came to watch the ceremony. They were stunned and tears of blood rolled down their cheeks. Many people pounded the ground and cried. The size of the heavenly world was equivalent to Earth before the Spirit Chi revival. After several years of development, it was now very prosperous with a population of 1 billion. But now, all of them had been destroyed and turned into fireballs. But the next moment, everyone was enveloped by a deep sense of fear and felt cold from head to toe. The immortal emperor was able to destroy the Big Dipper planet region in 7 moves with 9 steps. If he wanted to destroy the solar system, he would only need 1 move. The destruction of the heavenly world was just the beginning. Kang Te-chu, you are useful, so I won't kill you. But if you dare to continue to pester me, Earth will be next. Its historical mission has been completed. It doesn't matter whether it stays or not. The immortal emperor said coldly. His tone was very calm, as if he was talking about something normal. Are you really going to ignore the heavenly world for your own personal feelings? At this moment, all of the people on Earth and the extraterrestrial cultivators looked at Jiang Tian nervously. Some people were even filled with hatred and shouted crazily, is Kang Te-chu going to ignore our lives and destroy the solar system to fight the immortal emperor to the death? How selfish! Kang Te-chu, why are you so stubborn? Could it be that your so-called freedom and freedom are so important? He took your lover away, not you. Is that so? If you dare to kill him, I'll let the Hangyu celestial sect and all the planets under its jurisdiction, and even your followers in the deity realm of the 9 heavens, and even the deities and Buddhas, die with the people on earth. There was no joy or sorrow in Jiang Tian's eyes, as if he was hanging high up in the sky. The immortal emperor thought that he could threaten him, but he didn't know that he was the Taichu celestial lord, the god of Hongmeng. How could he be threatened? Even if the sun was destroyed, the earth would be destroyed, and billions of people would be turned into dust. Jiang Tian would not take a step back. Chapter 1813. Tisk, Tsk. Before this, I always felt that your temperament was not compatible with your skills. You are like an adult mortal, but you have the innocence of a child. But at this moment, you have some of the demeanor of a reincarnation of a mighty figure. The common people are just ants. Why should you care about their lives? The immortal monarch praised slightly, but he was too lazy to say anything more. He seemed to be waiting for Jiang Tian to come again, and then he would raise his hand to destroy the sun and the earth. Just when the entire earth and even all the worlds in the solar system were in despair. Suddenly, Zhao Xueqing's doppelganger knelt down in front of Jiang Tian and said tearfully, Jiang Tian, stop. I know you are not weaker than anyone in your life, but, stop. Stop. Jiang Tian stood in the void and said in a daze, you want me to stop? Yes, stop. Zhao Xueqing was full of heartache, longing, and struggle, but she still said, you said that the strong fight for the weak. This is our home, the place that we have always protected. Once, we were willing to die for this home. How can you and I abandon them? I've let you down. I've given in. Originally, the god's self-destruction was her last threat, but she found that under the immortal monarch's vast and surging power of the immortal world, even the smallest factor in her body was controlled, and she could not self-destruct at all. In other words, her last trump card could not be revealed at all. Moreover, Zhao Xueqing's doppelganger thought and consciousness were the same as the original. Although as tough as a rock and not inferior to men, she had the heart of a strong person and dared to draw her sword even in the face of the Big Dipper extraterrestrial enemy. But after all, she was kind and compassionate. She did not want to sit by and watch the immortal monarch destroy the entire homeland and plunge the people into misery and suffering. But, Qing'er, once you are taken away by him, you will fall into his trap and will never be able to rise again. Ha ha ha, you can't escape from the mercy of fate. Jiang Tian's 7 orifices were bleeding, and tears of blood were rolling down his face. However, he was laughing, and his laughter was getting louder and louder. He was on the verge of collapse, on the verge of insanity. He was grieving for the heavens and the earth, and his fury and hatred were overflowing. We still have time. We can still fight. We can still defy the heavens and change our fate. We can exchange time for space. We can still break free from this eternal chess game and turn from chess pieces into chess players. Zhao Xueqing revealed a sad smile. She seemed to be comforting and encouraging him. She said softly, but once Earth is destroyed, even if you are the god of Hongmeng and the Daluo Tao ancestor, you will not be able to reverse time and space. We will regret it for the rest of our lives. Look back, look at your daughter, look at your family. Jiang Tian turned around and saw his daughter, Jiang Beibei, in the depths of Tianqing School. She looked like a porcelain doll carved from jade. She was looking at the sky with tears in her eyes. Grandma, is Mom going to be taken away? I don't want Mommy to leave. I want to be hugged and kissed by her. Mom is just traveling with this old man. Just like when I went to the ruins of immortality, I will return. Zhang Wanqing comforted her with a teary smile. At that moment, Jiang Tian's will to fight slowly disappeared. He lowered his head and remained silent for a long time. His black hair fell like a waterfall and covered his face, making it impossible to see his expression. However, everyone saw drops of tears that contained God's blood dripping down from his long hair like dazzling gems, drifting in the air. He was crying. At that moment, the divine infant was crying blood, and the connection between heaven and earth was affecting the laws of the world. The people were crying and the earth was mourning. The wind was blowing, the clouds were surging, thunder was exploding and rain was pouring. Countless humans felt heavy and depressed. They didn't know why they were in pain. They beat their chests and sang loudly. Countless monsters roared at the sky, as if they were going to break the earth and tear the sky apart, surpassing the world and ascending to the heavens. Nascent soul cultivators were formed by the laws of the world. Every nascent soul cultivator had imprinted their own laws in the world of stars. When they died, the world would also feel it. It was like the death of the heaven's sun. But many nascent soul cultivators didn't receive such treatment when they died because their cultivation arts were incomplete. But Jiang Tian was a divine-grade nascent soul cultivator. He was like the descendant of a true god. No matter where he went, he would be recognized by heaven and earth. At that moment, there was great sadness and anger in his heart. Zhao Xueqing turned around and knelt on the ground. She said, "Senior, I'm willing to be your disciple and comprehend the laws of the world, but there are a few conditions. Please allow me, Master." "Ha, little girl, you're not stupid. You finally understand." The immortal monarch stood with his hands behind his back. He was overjoyed and laughed. "First, I will only love Kang Teichu in my life. No matter how many talents there are in the Central Galaxy and the Hengyu Celestial Sect, I will never change my mind and will never choose another cultivation partner. I hope Master can grant my wish." Zhao Xueqing said firmly. "I promise you. With my protection, no one in the deity realm would dare to bully you, let alone the Central Galaxy," the immortal monarch said without hesitation. His words were full of arrogance and dominance. A day together as husband and wife means endless devotion for the rest of your life. Although I can focus on the path of cultivation and cut off the sorrows with my sword, I still hope that you can give my husband a spaceship of the highest level without any worries so that he will have a chance to cross the sea of stars and travel in the universe to pursue his own path. Zhao Xueqing said again. The immortal monarch's eyes flashed as if he were calculating. He hesitated and said, "Okay. As long as you're willing to focus on cultivation and live up to my expectations, I will lend her a helping hand. Finally, Senior, you have to ensure the safety of the Jiang family and our homeland in the Milky Way. The graveyards of the deities and demons are already unstable. You have to ensure the stability of these stars," Zhao Xueqing said. "Okay. That's easy. I can resolve everything with a few pointers. I'll say that the Tianqing school will be the leader of the entire Earth. Earth will be the core of the entire little Tiannan galaxy. No one will dare to invade it." The immortal monarch nodded and then asked, "What else? Is there anything else?" "That's all." Zhao Xueqing stood up and retreated behind the immortal monarch. "Kang Te Chu, cultivate well." The immortal monarch nodded and looked calmly at Jiang Tian. He waved his right hand and a boat flew out from under his sleeve and landed in front of Jiang Tian. Jiang Tian lowered his head and said nothing. No one could see his expression clearly. No one knew what he was thinking. "Don't be discouraged. You will be reunited one day, and you will also kill the Hangyu celestial sect. I'll be waiting for you." Then, the immortal monarch seemed to be comforting, encouraging, and provoking. He waved his hand and the myriad stone cauldron and the sky-crushing sword were as good as new. The cracks disappeared and they flew to Jiang Tian. Only some purple chi and true thunder of the deity world of 9 heavens were left, but their dermic powers were not affected. "Yes, you have to wait." Jiang Tian slowly looked up and said in a low voice. Everyone's heart skipped a beat. They saw that Jiang Tian's eyes had turned scarlet because of the congested blood. They were like a demon or a god, containing a frightening fighting spirit, hatred, and anger. The immortal monarch nodded with a half-smile and looked calmly at Jiang Tian. Suddenly, he disappeared. The flashing true thunder of the 9th heavens around him and Zhao Xueqing behind him all disappeared into thin air. The dense purple gas dissipated. Zhao Xueqing's doppelganger didn't even have time to look back at Jiang Tian. At this moment, Jiang Tian and his beloved wife were really separated by endless galaxies, billions of light years. One was on this side of the starry sky, the other was on the other side of the starry sky. Even with Jiang Tian's current cultivation, he might not be able to reach this distance even if he flew for 1,000 or even 10,000 years. Even with the boat left behind by the immortal monarch, it would take at least 100 years to reach the Hangyu celestial sect. "Mom!" Jiang Beibei's cries of despair and reluctance rang out behind Jiang Tian. Chapter 1814. Jiang Tian slowly turned around and walked into the depths of Tianqing School, as if he were a zombie whose soul had been taken away. His eyes were scarlet and bloodshot, but he seemed to be in a daze. There were not many fluctuations in his emotions. With every step he took, he coughed up a mouthful of blood. In the end, his clothes were dyed red and he looked like a man made of blood. There were many cracks on his divine body, which was said to be indestructible. The spirit embryo in his body was in a mess and the divine infant shook violently, almost collapsing. Many divine chains came out of the sky and locked onto Jiang Tian, locking the 9 orifices divine infant. There were even terrifying Dharma laws in the world, suppressing the Dharma power in Jiang Tian's body. Meanwhile, Jiang Tian's power kept dropping from the 5th level of the nascent soul level to the 1st level. His nascent soul was even about to collapse. And yet, ancestral patriarch Shisha, Saint Anpo, and the other grand cultivators who had come to watch the ceremony looked at him in awe and bowed to show the highest respect. All the other cultivators on earth knelt on the ground and worshipped him. That was the first time Jiang Tian had really lost since he became a cultivator. However, it wasn't shameful for him to be defeated by a giant of the deity realm. Instead, it made people respect him. Nobody else would dare to face a giant of the deity realm, not even the supreme saints of the central galaxy or the Tao reunion perfected immortals. They wouldn't even be able to withstand an attack from the immortal lord and would die instantly. Jiang Tian was only a nascent soul cultivator, but he had withstood several attacks from a giant of the deity realm. Even though the immortal lord didn't really want to kill him, he was still unbelievably powerful. Master, Heavenly the Arch. Senior. Tang Linglong, Bai Mushua, Long Shengnan, Qi Liqui, and Ao Jiao all burst into tears when they saw Jiang Tian stumbling and seriously injured. Don't worry about me. Jiang Tian raised his hand and stopped them. He said with a trembling voice, everyone, let's go to the disaster area. Yes. All the disciples of the Tianqing school, the cultivators of the deity land and the cultivators from other planets looked at Jiang Tian with concern, then left for other places around the world. They threw themselves into disaster relief. Jiang Tian walked step by step into the depths of Tianqing school. Jiang Beibei ran over and threw herself into Jiang Tian's arms. She cried, Daddy, Mommy was snatched away. Don't worry. Jiang Tian squatted down and gently stroked her hair. He said softly, one day, I will bring you across the endless starry sky and stand in front of her again. Jiang Tian, how do you feel? The whole family came over to ask about it. Their eyes were filled with concern, and their eyes were filled with tears. I need to go into seclusion for a while. Jiang Tian waved his hand and went into the depths of Tianqing school. Then, he fell to the ground. After a long time, Jiang Tian opened his eyes and immediately meditated with his legs crossed. He took out the god fragments and blood mist he had obtained during the battle with the cultivators of the Big Dipper sect. He absorbed them and refined them to restore his power. My divine body is broken, my divine infant is shaken, my spirit embryo is cracked and my divine laws are suppressed by the laws of heaven. I've been severely injured this time. But the immortal monarch didn't kill me. The deity realm purple chi and the true thunder of the 9 heavens he used can even nourish me. I'll take this opportunity to break them and build them up. I'll break these jars and be completely reborn. Jiang Tian thought to himself. Jiang Tian's divine body, divine infant and divine laws were the most powerful in the universe. There was no room for improvement. However, in Jiang Tian's memory, there was an extremely ethereal and legendary state where the divine body, divine infant and divine laws were completely combined. Once that was achieved, the 3 flowers at one's prominence and the 5 energies at one's origin would be called the ultimate level of the divine infant. Even the children of true gods couldn't compare. Jiang Tian had wanted to merge them before, but he had never achieved it. After all, he had cultivated all 3 powers to the phenomenal success level. It was too risky to cultivate from scratch. If he failed, the loss would be irreversible. Although I've lost a lot of energy and my power has dropped after fighting with the immortal monarch this time, it's a good thing for me. I'll take this opportunity to merge the 3 powers of essence, chi, and spirit to lay the most solid foundation for advancing into the soul formation level in the future. Jiang Tian made up his mind. The boat he left behind is a quasi-deity artifact. It can help me cross the sea of stars. No matter what the immortal monarch is up to, Qing'er's power is still too low. I won't be able to meet his requirements for at least 500 years. During this time, Qing'er will be safe. 500 years, it wasn't a long time, but it wasn't short either. For some grand masters in the deity world who sat and watched the changes of the galaxy and the sea, 500 years was just a matter of closing their eyes and taking a nap, stabilizing their realm and refining their dharma spells and divine powers. Some grand cultivators who liked to watch dharma spells from their palms could take 1,000 or even 10,000 years. But for a universe with turbulent times, 500 years was too long. In the 500 years Jiang Tian had been in, the universe had changed magnificently. Many overlords and geniuses had appeared in the central galaxy. One after another, the Tao reunion overlords looked down on the world. Even Jiang Tian, the Taichu celestial lord who had the potential to go through the heavenly tribulation, had appeared. 500 years is enough for me to ascend to the deity world and compete with the immortal monarch. Jiang Tian's eyes were deep and distant. His battle intent was hidden. He looked up at the sky. His gaze seemed to pass through layers of voids, endless arrays, endless galaxies, reaching the central galaxy, and billions of planes. It was as if he could see the supreme world shrouded in endless celestial light that suppressed everything. There were some things and some grudges that Jiang Tian still had to settle with some people even after being reborn for 10,000 years. So what if he was above the 9 heavens? It wasn't like he hadn't fought with him before. Just like that, Jiang Tian closed his eyes and supported his broken body, starting to recover his power and even going further. Even though he was suppressed by layers of Dharma laws and his body was broken at the moment. However, the mysterious technique that Jiang Tian cultivated was truly too terrifying. Every one of them was the most powerful in the universe. As he inhaled and exhaled, a huge amount of vital qi, laws, great Daos, as well as the treasures, blood essences, and spirits of gods used to fight against the Big Dipper silently gathered like a funnel with Jiang Tian as the center. The spirit qi on earth was rich at the moment, the Dharma laws were strengthened and the grand Daos were stable. It was the best place for Jiang Tian to cultivate. The gains from the battle with the Big Dipper were as vast as the sea and couldn't be measured by a car. In the end, even the purple qi and true thunder of the deity world from the immortal monarch were gradually absorbed and refined. Whoosh! The cracks on the surface of Jiang Tian's divine body were quickly healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. His chaotic power, which almost fell out of the nascent soul level, was also slowly and steadily recovering at this moment. Level 1 of the nascent soul level, Level 2, Level 3, Level 3, night fell and a cool breeze came, bringing a hint of coolness. The moonlight shone on Jiang Tian from between the clouds. The sun rose, the sunlight gilding Jiang Tian with a layer of gold. His expression was calm and firm. Even though his Tao robes were tattered, there was a trace of otherworldly aura, as if he was a true immortal of the immortal world, eternally unmoving. The rain fell, lightning flashed, and thunder rumbled. Jiang Tian was still sitting there without moving. He didn't even use his Dharma power to create a shield. He let the rain fall, wetting his hair and clothes almost in the blink of an eye. He was getting close to nature, feeling the world and merging with the grand Daos. Yellow leaves fell and rolled in the air, slowly falling on Jiang Tian's shoulder. Day after day, night after night, wind and rain, Jiang Tian always sat there without moving. He closed his eyes tightly, did not eat or drink, did not care about anything, and cultivated silently like an ascetic monk. He was like a statue, or even like a living corpse. Moss grew on his clothes, but his body and aura did not seem to have changed at all. Every 3 months, Tang Linglong and Jiang Beibei would come hand in hand and quietly cut off his crazily long beard and sticky hair for him. They would also wipe his dusty and dirty cheeks. However, he did not dare to mention the matter of bathing and changing clothes to Jiang Tian. As for other mundane matters, he did not even dare to mention them. Occasionally, a disciple would come to the door and look at him with concern, but after kowtowing 3 times and 9 times, they would leave silently, afraid that they would disturb his seclusion. After waiting for 3 years, Jiang Tian finally opened his eyes for the first time. Chapter 18:15. After cultivating for 3 years, I've finally refined the energy of the soul formation cultivators and the half-saints of the Beta sect, as well as the purple qi and true thunder left by the undying arch. Not only have I recovered to the mid-stage nascent soul level, but I've also reached the peak stage of the nascent soul level. Jiang Tian's eyes revealed a trace of depth as he sighed in his heart. For normal people, it was only 3 years, but for Jiang Tian, who had been accelerated by the time acceleration array disk, it was actually equivalent to 30 years. This was the longest period of seclusion since Jiang Tian was reborn, and it was also the period of seclusion with the greatest harvest. Jiang Tian looked at the nascent soul level with sadness and joy in his eyes. The sad thing was that he realized, just like what Saint Anpo had said, the higher level of the nascent soul level required more energy to continue advancing. Even though the essence Qi on earth had been restored and the Dharma laws and Grand Taos had been strengthened, it wasn't enough to support his future cultivation. Jiang Tian had to go to the Star Ocean and the Central Galaxy, so he had to bid farewell to his family and friends. The happy thing was that not only had his power recovered, but it had also improved greatly. His spirit embryo was extremely heavy right then, as if it were made of gold. It was gradually turning into a divine treasure palace. The nascent soul was also extremely strong, like a baby growing into a young man. It wasn't far from becoming a god. Rise! Jiang Tian's eyes became deep, as if he were an ancient god who had created the world. He suddenly yelled. Above his head, the clouds and mist actually condensed into 3 huge flowers that shot straight into the 9 heavens. Of the 3 flowers, one was pitch black like a black hole, one was 5-colored, and one was flickering with golden light. They all took form and rose higher and higher. Every single one of them was 50 kilometers wide, like a huge cloud. This is, ancestral patriarch Shisha, Saint Anpo, and the heavenly generals of the heavenly courts were dumbfounded after seeing this. Ancestral patriarch Shisha, Saint Anpo, and the other cultivators from other planets were allowed to stay on Earth because of their contributions after the battle of the Beta sect and the arrival of the Undying the Arch. The spirit Qi on Earth had recovered further. The essence Qi and the Dharma laws on Earth were much denser than 3 years ago. It was prosperous and had become the cultivation sacred ground of the entire Little Tiannan planet region. Countless soul formation grand cultivators and nascent soul cultivators from the Star Ocean arrived. However, it was different from when the Big Dipper cultivators aggressively besieged Earth and wanted to take over its nest. These cultivators were all very humble and well-behaved. Moreover, they had to register at the Interstellar Immigration Bureau and obtain a temporary residence certificate. They also had to establish meritorious deeds, slay demons and devils, participate in construction, or pass down their skills and preach the Tao. Only after obtaining enough points would they be able to obtain a renewal and achieve long-term residence. 3 flowers at one's prominence. My God, it was rumored that only return to void stage great sages and even Tao integration stage true immortals would be able to manifest this phenomenon. Why would it appear above Tai Chu's head? Could it be that he has reached the void return stage or even the soul formation stage? Ancestor Shisha's demonic vertical pupils suddenly shrank, and her expression changed. No, Grand Primordium is still a nascent soul cultivator, but he's already at the peak of the nascent soul stage. Saint Anpo was so excited that his entire body trembled. According to the ancient records, the 3 flowers at one's prominence doesn't only appear during the void return saints and Tao reunion perfected immortals breakthroughs. It can also appear during the nascent soul and soul formation stage, but it's extremely rare. In essence, the 3 flowers at one's prominence is the ultimate flower formed when the Dharma power, body and divine soul power are gathered to the extreme. It means that Tai Chu's energy has already reached the peak and he can't go any further. He's already at the limit of his current level. The old man has also seen such records before, but he thought it was too illusory. I never thought that Senior Tai Chu would have reached such a level. Another grand cultivator from the Star Ocean said in shock. After the discussion of the grand cultivators from the Star Ocean, everyone finally understood that the 3 flowers at one's prominence were also called the flower of the end and flower of the peak. It meant that the cultivator who formed the flower was already standing at the peak of a level, the top of the mountain, and there was no more path ahead. Cultivators who had stepped into this realm were also known as the strongest. Theoretically speaking, the golden core level was the strongest golden core level, and the nascent soul level was the strongest nascent soul level. However, there were only a few nascent soul cultivators in the entire Tiannan planet region or even the entire universe who had formed the 3 flowers. Even if there were, there would only be one. It could be the divine soul, the body, or the Dharma power. Even in the central galaxy, there might not be more than a few people like Jiang Tian, who had gathered all 3 flowers at the same time. I've formed the 3 flowers at one's prominence, which means that I've reached the peak of the golden core level. The next step is to form a divine treasure with my spirit embryo and form a god. I can't go any further, Jiang Tian said. Continuing to cultivate right then wouldn't be of much use to Jiang Tian. He would only be able to strengthen his body and refine his Dharma power. He would only be able to increase the quantity, there wouldn't be any change in quality. When cultivators in the universe reached this level, they would either try to break through or create powerful Dharma treasures and divine powers to protect themselves. They would also study all kinds of arrays and make pills. As he spoke, he stood up and the vines on his legs were gently torn apart. With a wave of his hand, he cast out a dust-dispelling talisman. His entire body was clean and flawless. His ragged clothes were torn apart as he changed into a clean robe and slowly walked out. Congratulations, Tai Chu. You've formed the 3 flowers at one's prominence and reached the peak stage of the nascent soul level. You're only a step away from the soul formation level. Congratulations to Senior Tai Chu for his profound magic power, long life, and forever shaking the sea of stars. Master. Your Majesty, you're out. When Jiang Tian walked out from the depths of the sect, the new Heavenly Court's heavenly generals, the Heavenly Clear sect cultivators, and even the extraterrestrial powerhouses bowed deeply and kowtowed 3 times and 9 times. When Tang Linglong and the other female disciples saw that Jiang Tian was in high spirits and had recovered to his original state, they were so moved that they shed tears. Hm. Jiang Tian nodded and released his immortal will. It immediately covered half of the earth and many images appeared in his mind. Meanwhile, August 9, 2021 AD. It had been 3 years since Jiang Tian defeated the Big Dipper coalition army. In these 3 years, earth-shaking changes had taken place on Earth. It could be said that there were new changes every day. Swish, swish. Many flying ships flew across the sky. Those flying ships were dozens of feet long and there were many types of them, such as begonia leaves, tigers and leopards, giant beasts and shuttles. They were also powered by different powers. Most of them were driven by controllable nuclear fusion or the power of talisman arrays. The 2 different powers of technology and immortal spells were miraculously blended together. 3 years ago, controllable nuclear fusion technology was only limited to the military, but it had already been widely used in the civilian world. In the world, the spirit chi was getting richer and the Dharma laws were denser. It had already reached the level of the Big Dipper planet region, or even higher. Even many old people who weren't suitable for cultivation had started to practice fitness arts at the moment. They practiced in parks, dojos and suburbs. Their punches were extremely powerful. It was estimated that the average lifespan of a human would reach 200 years. There were even more geniuses on Earth in the past 3 years. Juniors like Tang Linglong, Sasaki Haisha, Shen Mange, and Martial Demon Yang had all stepped into the mid-stage of nascent soul realm. After counting, there were already several hundred nascent soul realm heavenly monarchs. Besides, there were thousands of nascent soul cultivators and over 100 soul formation cultivators. It was much more prosperous than the Big Dipper planet when it was at its peak. Dad, you're finally out. Jiang Bebe ran over. She was short and 2 of her front teeth were missing, but she was smiling brightly. She pulled Jiang Tian's sleeve and asked him to hug her. I have a daughter who has just grown up. Jiang Tian beamed and picked up the little girl. After his cultivation, Jiang Tian spent the next few days with his family. He played chess with his grandpa and traveled with his daughter to relax and enjoy his family. On this day, Jiang Tian looked at Jiang Changgang and the rest of his family and said with a smile, Grandpa, Dad, Mom, for the next few days, I want to walk around and take a look. Go. Zhang Wanqing's eyes suddenly turned red. She knew that Jiang Tian was probably saying goodbye to his family and friends on Earth. After that, he might go to the Star Ocean and the Central Galaxy to find Xiao Xueqing. Chapter 1816. Knowing that Jiang Tian was going on a trip, Tang Linglong held Jiang Bebe's hand and hurried over. She smiled and said, Master, you must take Bebe and me with you on this trip. Never mind. I just want to be alone. You don't have to be involved. Jiang Tian was wearing a simple azure outfit, like an ancient scholar. He chuckled and said. According to the age of this life, Jiang Tian was already in his 30s, but he had lived 2 lives, so he had experienced a lot. Because of the departure of Zhao Xueqing's clone, he had become more gloomy and had a different kind of charm. Master. During your seclusion this time, you've achieved 3 flowers at once prominence and 5 cheese unification. You've cultivated to the peak of the nascent soul stage and are only 1 step away from the soul formation stage. You've gained a lot. You should be happy, right? Jiang Tian touched Jiang Beibei's head with a gentle look. He walked in the forest with one hand behind his back and the other hand holding Jiang Beibei's hand. He smiled and said, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't happy. She's the most powerful nascent soul cultivator in the universe. No one in the central galaxy, the deity realm and the divine realm can compare to her. More importantly, I'm only 1 step away from reaching the soul formation level and laying a solid foundation. His smile gradually disappeared and his eyes became gloomy again. Tang Linglong held Jiang Beibei's other hand and smiled gently. Is it because of the arrival of the immortal monarch? Jiang Tian took a deep breath and said, the immortal monarch of the immortal monarch world is the immortal monarch. The great powers of the world of immortals have set this up since time immemorial. They used the entire lesser heavenly south as their chessboard, the galaxies as their borders, and the corpses of immortals and demons as their pawns. However, the most important pawn in this game is your masteress. We're entangled in karma and it's heavier than the chains of the great path. I even suspect that there's someone even more powerful behind the scenes, someone like the Buddha Lord or the Tao ancestor. All these years, I swept through the dimensional world, went on expeditions to the ruins of immortality, fought the Big Dipper, and even faced my previous life's master, the undying sovereign. One after another, they came one after another, pressuring me to the point where I couldn't breathe. Jiang Tian's face showed a hint of sadness and exhaustion. He said bitterly, in the past decade, I've been blessed with great fortune. Although I've gained a lot, much more than the average soul formation cultivators, the immortal monarch didn't kill me. That means everything is under his control. Let me always have a kind of feeling that I can't break free from the shackles. Everything I've gained has instead become like a wedding dress for someone else. It's beyond my control, like a bubble in a dream that can be lost at any time. When he heard his master bare his heart to him, his eyes were filled with deep affection, regret, and gentleness. In a gentle voice, he said, the number of Dian is 50, but 49 are used. One of them is missing from the way of heaven. It's the only way to survive in a desperate situation. Master, you're entangled in karma and the powerful figures in the immortal world are coveting you. Only by working hard, moving forward firmly, and walking your own path can you grasp this slim chance of survival. This path is very tiring and bitter. But after all, you're the reincarnation of the god of Hongmeng. Your Taoist heart is as firm as a rock. You have great perseverance and divine sense, and you're also determined to die. Your current feelings of exhaustion, emptiness, sadness, and depression are only temporary. You'll definitely be able to walk out of here. She suddenly bowed deeply, her eyes narrowed into beautiful crescents. She smiled mischievously, revealing a rarely seen feminine side, and said, this disciple was rash. I actually dared to show off my slight skill in front of Master. All of this, Master has crossed bridges in his life, and has walked thousands of times more than I have. He understands it better than I do. Master, you've just finished your closed-door training. What you need is rest, relaxation, and to forget all these troubles for the time being. Once this is over, you'll definitely be able to reinvigorate yourself and regain your fighting spirit. She suddenly pulled out the red blazing bone sword, pointed it at the sky, and shouted, look, those gods and Buddhas are using us as pawns and manipulating our lives. Shall we kill them? Jiang Tian looked at her silently, feeling both amused and warm. It was like a rich man with hundreds of millions of assets suddenly losing $1 million, but he was comforted by a poor friend who was sincere. But Jiang Tian didn't say anything. During his closed-door training, he had thought too much and vaguely understood the true purpose of the immortal emperor's many schemes. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that it was difficult to escape the fate of being a pawn. At this time, his Taoist heart was lax, and nothing he said would be driven by emotions. His fighting spirit would also be empty and weak. Jiang Tian nodded and said with a smile, "You're right. In fact, there's a recognized rule in the cultivation world of the Central Galaxy. If you want to become a god, you have to become a mortal first. So, not only do I have to say goodbye to my old friends this time, but I also have to relax my body and mind while saying goodbye. I want to experience the world, understand the heavenly laws, meet old friends, talk about the past and forget those troubles. This trip may take 3 days, 3 years, or 30 years, until I shake off the burden in my heart, regain my Taoist heart and have the courage to go straight to the Star Ocean. I know Master won't take me with him when he leaves. That's why I'm asking you to let me accompany him this time," Tang Linglong said with a smile. "That's right." Jiang Tian said frankly, "Your masteress is far away from the Star Ocean and must be worried about me every day. I'll feel guilty if I take you with me." "What do you mean?" "You're guilty." Tang Linglong said with a mischievous smile, "Masteress is generous and open-minded. She's never suspicious. I've never had any animosity or resentment towards you because I accompanied you. This guilt of yours is entirely because of yourself. If you don't have any feelings for me, why would you feel guilty?" Well, Jiang Tian was stunned. He had been avoiding these women for a long time, but now that he thought about it carefully, he felt that it was more complicated than it could be. He was indeed a simple person when it came to relationships. In his previous life, although he flirted with women everywhere when he was young, it was not true. He was like a naughty child playing around. However, after Zhao Xueqing's death, he regretted it all his life and felt guilty. After he followed his master to the Central Galaxy, although many fairies and Sanuses pursued him, he had never been tempted, let alone become Taoist companions. After his rebirth, he also kept himself clean. He waved his sword to cut off the strands of love and kept a distance from many women. Therefore, although he was good at cultivation, he could not understand the word love. He only knew that he loved Zhao Xueqing deeply. At this time, Tang Linglong's question really stumped him. Fortunately, Tang Linglong had been in seclusion for several years and comprehended the Great Tao. She was also much more clear-headed when it came to relationships. She was indifferent and did not linger. She quickly changed the topic and said with a smile, "Then, Master, let's go." "Okay." Jiang Tian nodded and thought for a while. He clapped and said with a smile, "The East Sea is the place where you and I met. Let's go to Lin Zhou first." "Okay." Tang Linglong nodded and said with a smile, "Just like the ancient sages, I have not entered the house 3 times. In the 3 years since I returned to Earth, I have been to disaster relief everywhere and have never set foot in the East Sea." Huaxia, Lin Zhou. Jiang Tian and Zhao Xueqing's old villa was crowded with tourists, and it was bustling with life. Dear passengers, the important scenic spot we are about to arrive at is the former residence of the master of Tianqing School, the leader of the Myth Alliance, the spiritual leader of the Earth Defense Alliance, the great helmsman of the Spirit Qi Revival, the great pioneer of the new era of the cultivation civilization, the great commander of the anti-Beta siege, the new master of the Heavenly Court, the Taichu Emperor, the strongest overlord in the Little Tiannan Star region, the first Divine Lord, Kang Taichu's former residence in the East Sea. The tour guide holding a red flag seemed to be showing off her skills. She recited a series of titles without hesitation, which made the surrounding tourists applaud and cheer. "Okay. We can finally visit the former residence of the Taichu Divine Lord." In the crowd, Jiang Tian was wearing ordinary casual clothes and holding Jiang Beibei's hand. He looked like an ordinary middle-aged man hiding in the city. He looked at them with a smile. Suddenly, his eyes turned red. Chapter 1817. That was the place where he and Zhao Xueqing got married and where his dream began. But now, even the King's Mansion #1 on Lion Peak had been renovated and turned into a tourist attraction. The Taichu History Museum was built in Linzhou. Thousands of people came to visit every day. At this time, in the courtyard of the villa, there was a bronze statue of Jiang Tian and Zhao Xueqing holding hands. In the display window and on the table, there was a display of Jiang Tian and Zhao Xueqing's life, as well as many battle records. The holographic projection was playing many promotional videos. "Dad, is this where you and Mom lived?" Jiang Beibei looked around curiously and asked. Jiang Tian held her little hand and walked into the living room like an ordinary person, hiding among the tourists. Seeing the things, he thought of her and sighed with emotion. "I'm just a rich kid. I'm as stupid as a cow and as hot-tempered as a tiger. I didn't accomplish anything, but I had a bad temper. But your mom never despised me. I was crazy back then and your mom had to work hard. She had to stay up late every day and take care of me." He stroked the 29-inch TV with a big belly and said with a smile, "But she never complained. She worked hard all the time to make life a little better, even if it was just a little better. Because her father was too poor at the time, she bought the TV outside from a flea market. Technology is developing rapidly now. Holographic projection and VR technology are all used. This kind of old TV can really be considered an antique." Then, a manager walked over and bowed. "Sir, this is a relic. You can't touch it." "Oh. I'm sorry." Jiang Tian smiled and took back his hand. "Jiang, no, Taichu Divine Lord, you're here." The administrator's face was full of surprise, as if he had seen a ghost in broad daylight. "What? The Taichu Divine Lord is here? Are you serious? Isn't the Taichu Divine Lord in seclusion? Why is he here?" This shout startled everyone. For a time, the tourists surrounded Jiang Tian so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. They all bowed to Jiang Tian, their faces filled with admiration. "Yes. Let me have a look." Jiang Tian cupped his hands and said with a warm expression, "Sorry to disturb everyone." "Not at all. What are you talking about?" "It's our honor to meet the Taichu Divine Lord. Grand Primordium Divine Lord, take your time. We'll back off," everyone said hurriedly. Jiang Tian was transcendent and otherworldly. In the eyes of the crowd, he was like a god. In the eyes of the crowd, perhaps giving him some peace was the greatest respect. However, at this time, a beautiful figure walked against the flow of people and quickly walked over. She said excitedly, "Jiang Tian. It's you." The woman was in her 30s, but she had maintained herself very well. She looked like a 28-year-old girl, but her pair of clear, beautiful eyes revealed a bit of depth and firmness, which added a bit of a different kind of charm to her. The nameplate on her chest also revealed her identity. She was the curator of the Kang Taichu archive in Linzhou. Lu Yiting. Jiang Tian smiled warmly and said, "How did you become a curator? Don't you care about your natural beauty? How did you become a curator?" Lu Yiting was wearing a black business suit. Her slender legs were wrapped in thin black stockings and high heels, but she still looked smart and capable. She looked at Jiang Tian excitedly, and her eyes were slightly red. She smiled and said, "Natural beauty is already dead." "Why do you mention this? Dead?" Jiang Tian was slightly stunned. However, he immediately understood. With the recovery of spirit qi and the prosperity of the cultivation civilization, the lifespan of human beings could be doubled. As long as mortals practiced breathing techniques, they would not age. It was normal for natural beauty to be abandoned by the times. Yes. To be exact, I took the initiative to close the business. Lu Yiting smiled and said, "However, I seem to have been reborn. I talk to Shen Lu and Zhengli here every day, or tell the tourists about your deeds. I'm very happy. Is this Bebe? She's so cute. She looks exactly like her." Lu Yiting squatted down and hugged Jiang Beibei with a face full of affection. "Hello, Auntie Yiting," Jiang Beibei said sweetly. "The business you valued the most is dead, but you've been reborn? Interesting." Jiang Tian smiled and seemed to understand something. "It's not easy for you to come back. Go and have a look." Lu Yiting suddenly remembered that Zhao Xueqing had been taken away by the immortal monarch for 3 years. She could imagine Jiang Tian's mood. She said with slightly red eyes, "Don't worry. I've asked people to close the shop. No one will disturb you." She winked at Tang Linglong, and the two quietly left. "It was on this sofa that I rewrote the prescription of the muscle-nourishing ointment. Your mother thought that I didn't know anything and was writing nonsense to ruin her plans. She wanted to pinch my ear." Jiang Tian pulled his daughter to sit on the old sofa in the living room. His eyes were full of tenderness as he smiled and said, "However, this is not the original sofa. To put it nicely, your mother is thrifty and diligent. To put it bluntly, she is stingy and haggles over every penny. Life was difficult at that time. After your mother and I moved to the King No. 1 villa, she rented this villa to someone else. I guess that family thought the sofa was shabby, so they replaced it. Your Auntie Yiting probably found the original photo and found someone to make a similar model. However, the design is exquisite. It's exactly the same. She even made it look old with care. Even the holes made by the cigarette are exactly the same. Dad, you're so annoying. Since it's exactly the same, it's the original. Why do you think so much?" Jiang Beibei couldn't sit still. She ran around and suddenly turned back and said, "Since it's exactly the same, it's the original." The childish and naive words flashed through Jiang Tian's mind like a bolt of lightning, illuminating a corner of the fog. Of course. Since it's exactly the same, of course it's the original. Even if it's not the same, it's still the original. Jiang Beibei said seriously. "Dad, I heard Uncle Dahe talk to me about cultivation. Mortals are just mortal bodies. The foundation elixir is the life of true essence. The bodies of nascent soul and soul formation cultivators can be formed by laws. The old monsters of void return can even live in the void and become one with heaven and earth. Dad, you've changed a lot from a mortal to a nascent soul cultivator, but you're still you." "Ha, Beibei, you're good. You can teach me now." Jiang Tian laughed heartily. With a gratified expression, he said unhurriedly, "Not only will the objective existence change over a long period of time, but even the consciousness and thoughts will undergo earth-shaking changes. But I can tell you that I'm still your father. You can answer this question. But you may not answer the next question. Let me tell you a funny story. Auntie Linglong read it to me before I went to bed last night." Jiang Beibei put her hands behind her back and said softly, "There is a ship called the Ship of Theseus, which can sail on the sea for hundreds of years. This is attributed to the fact that it has a lot of spare parts and can be repaired and replaced continuously. As long as a piece of wood rots, it will be replaced, and so on until all the functional parts are no longer the original ones. The question is the ship that was created in the end still the original ship of Theseus, or is it a completely different ship? If it's not the original ship, then at what point is it no longer the original ship? If we use the old parts of the ship of Theseus and directly build a new ship, then which of the two ships is the real ship of Theseus?" What an interesting story. That's right. Is it still that ship? Which of the two ships is the real ship of Theseus? Jiang Tian listened with a smile, but his face was as calm as a lake, and his heart was like thunder. Lightning once again shone through the fog. Chapter 18:18. "Humph, Dad, don't underestimate me. Kids these days are very knowledgeable." Jiang Beibei put her hands behind her back and said, "Let's not talk about cultivation. Let's not talk about cultivators. Even for mortals, according to the research of scientists, the cells in the human body only need 200 days to die. However, humans won't die because they can constantly regenerate their cells. This is equivalent to saying that after 20 days, this mortal is no longer the same as the original mortal from a physiological point of view. But isn't he the original him? She looked at Jiang Tian motionlessly, as if waiting for Jiang Tian's answer. He is. Jiang Tian nodded. But why do you think it's a new boat and not an old one? This is a new sofa and not an old one. In essence, it's a change of composition. Those tourists don't know the inside story, so they think it's an old sofa. Many people were taking photos here just now. Jiang Beibei argued. Jiang Tian was shocked. Lightning flashed again and illuminated the fog. I understand now. I finally understand. He looked up at the 9 heavens and his eyes gradually deepened. His gaze was as sharp as a sword. Zhao Xueqing wasn't used by the immortal lord to seal the 10,000 orifices demonic infant. Her body and the 10,000 orifices demonic infant were born together with Star Destroyer. No wonder Zhao Xueqing's birth was so strange. Her mother didn't have any sexual activity and suddenly got pregnant. The 10,000 orifices demonic infant needs 13 umbilical cords, but Zhao Xueqing also needs 13 umbilical cords when she was pregnant with Jiang Beibei. Star Destroyer is just a simulation of the womb of a woman with the immortal body of the immortal phoenix. It's like 2 parts combined to form a Zhao Xueqing with the 10,000 orifices demonic infant. She bears the karma on behalf of a certain supreme being. Ordinary people fear karma and mighty people fear karma. Even Buddha and Tao ancestor who have thousands of Tao in one body is also karma. The more karma one had, the greater the calamity one would suffer. It would be difficult to transcend and live forever. Only by severing karma or allowing another to take his place would he be able to transcend the Taos of the 3 dimensions and truly attain immortality without cause or effect, without life or death, without beginning or end. And Zhao Xueqing is the substitute of this mighty person, the Nirmanakya. For Tao integration perfected immortals, 3,000 years would be spring, 3,000 years would be autumn, and 10,000 years would be a single spring and autumn. However, when their lifespan was exhausted, they would return to the heavens. The Hongmeng god had created a world and formed a universe. How terrifying was his power! However, the universe was still not eternal. It was rumored that at the peak of the Big Bang, everything in the world would turn into a soup of particles. Everything would be in a state of chaos before returning to the singularity. This Hongmeng god would also be implicated by his own world's great Tao and return to dust. This black hand is truly a supreme almighty. Jiang Tian suddenly sighed, and his mood became even more gloomy. Although he had heard of this realm before, even when he ascended to Hongmeng, he did not dare to covet it. Do you understand? Are you scared? You should have understood long ago. You should have been scared long ago. Suddenly, a strange laughter sounded. It was as ear-piercing as the cry of an old crow. Jiang Beibei also saw it. A strange person suddenly appeared next to Jiang Tian like a ghost. He trembled slightly and lowered his head to laugh. His hair and beard were long and messy, and they intertwined with each other to cover his face. Only a pair of eyes filled with confusion and fear could be seen. He looked at the blue and clear sky in a daze. Dad, this strange person, Jiang Beibei was so frightened that she stumbled back and sat on the ground. Her small mouth cracked open and tears rolled down. Why are you crying? I'm your dad too. The strange old man glared at Jiang Beibei fiercely. Beibei, don't be afraid. Jiang Tian got up and hugged Jiang Beibei in his arms. He smiled and comforted her softly. This is Dad's dead self. It's my life's memory and experience. You can also see it as an external manifestation of my immortal will. He revealed his true self to talk to me and solve my problems together. I'm indeed the fear and worry in his heart. I'm the desire and worry in his heart. I'm the anger and hatred in his heart. I'm the bestial and demonic thoughts in his heart. But it's hard to control. If I go crazy, I won't even recognize my own family and kill you. The strange person suddenly turned his head and glared fiercely at Jiang Beibei with his turbid eyes. He bared his teeth and threatened her mischievously. Jiang Beibei realized that the strange person looked very similar to her dad and was so fierce. She couldn't help but cry out in fear. Dad has become old and ugly. Tang Linglong and Lu Yiting heard the commotion and rushed in. When they saw this strange scene, they were so frightened that they turned pale. I can't do anything to you. I can crush you to pieces now or suppress you in my heart. Don't mess around anymore. Jiang Tian's true body berated. Ha, my heart aches for scaring my daughter. After all, she's my flesh and blood. I'm just playing. Why are you so nervous? He suddenly saw Lu Yiting and Tang Linglong. His eyes were burning with greed. He laughed and said, My lord, these two girls are so smooth and they're interested in you. Why don't you accept them? You're just pretending. Take them all into your harem. Let's do more exercise tonight. Lu Yiting blushed and looked at Tang Linglong in surprise. Where did this strange person come from? Why does he look so similar to Jiang Tian? In the cultivation world, it's called passing self. It corresponds to ego and Tao ego. According to my teacher, when one is in the transcendent mortal stage and experiences the mortal world, demonic thoughts will appear. Tang Linglong said softly. Lu Yiting was puzzled. She had little contact with cultivation. Not many people on earth knew that the transcendent mortal stage was a step before reaching the deity transformation stage. Tang Linglong scratched her head, thought for a while, and said, You don't understand cultivation. But you can understand it as the ID, ego, and superego in philosophy. The ID is the combination of all kinds of instinctive impulses and evil thoughts in Jiang Tian's heart. It doesn't understand the law of morality and blindly pursues satisfaction without caring about anything. Oh, I understand. It's like multiple personality disorder, but Jiang Tian can show it. But it turns out that Jiang Tian also has thoughts about us. Lu Yiting was very interested. She giggled and blushed, revealing a touch of charm. Who doesn't have dirty thoughts in their heart? He's not a god. You're so beautiful, how can he not have any thoughts about you? Tang Linglong smiled and said, However, the old saying is right. Obscenity is not about the heart, but about the heart, no one is perfect. This is an instinct. At least with my teacher's current cultivation, he can't see through it. It's just that my teacher has deep feelings for Sister Qing'er, so he can suppress it. The reason why I'm showing my past self now is not because of love and to get rid of my inner demons. It should be related to the ancient arrangements of the mighty figures of the celestial world. To be careful, I need to look at my heart and soul to see through everything. Tisk, tsk, tsk. You two little girls are smiling so beautifully and shamelessly. Why don't we have fun together tonight? The vanishing self freak stood up, his eyes burning with passion. That's enough. Jiang Tian blushed and shouted. The strange man jumped 3 feet high and said angrily, What are you shouting for? Can't you enjoy yourself after fighting for a lifetime? Continue playing and dancing. At this time, another figure suddenly appeared. He was wearing a Taoist robe and was as handsome as a god. He was bathed in immortal light and divine light, exuding a sacred aura like that of an immortal Buddha. He stepped forward and stepped on the strange man. He flicked his sleeves and said coldly, Evil creature. You only think about dirty things all day. If you continue to pester me, I'll stomp you to death. At this time, Jiang Tian's true self, and past self appeared at the same time. One was open and aboveboard, like a god or a Buddha, as emotionless as the great Tao. The other was simple and unadorned, lingering in the mortal world, but cold and restrained. The other was timid, wretched, and impulsive. But there was a bit of affection and cuteness. Chapter 18-19. Daowa, spare me, I won't do it again. I won't do it again. The eccentric was trembling in fear, but he didn't forget to wink at Lu Yiting and Su Qianxi. He was so naughty and wretched that the two girls didn't know whether to laugh or cry. That Dao only appeared for a brief moment, and after suppressing the strange man, it instantly turned into specks of light that filled the air and disappeared. Lu Yiting saw that the eccentric seemed to be more honest. She smiled and said, "I've asked Shen Lu and his wife to have dinner together tonight." "Okay." Jiang Tian nodded slightly and went out with the eccentric. In order to let Jiang Tian meet more acquaintances, they chose the restaurant of an old friend. This old friend was Sister Li, the widow of an anti-narcotics police officer. Back then, she used to help Jiang Tian's family. After Jiang Tian became famous, he also helped her deal with Yi Wudao's son, Yi Ji, who kept harassing her. In the end, when he fought with Yi Tianren, he also uprooted Yi Wudao's entire family. He also bought a piece of land for Sister Li. Sister Li worked with other businessmen and developed this place into a food street, including her own restaurant. Elder Sister Li had prepared a private room for Jiang Tian. Right now, she was living a very happy life and was very grateful to Jiang Tian. Her son had grown up and was also a police officer, but he had already cultivated and was a qi refinement expert. He even specially rushed over to offer Jiang Tian a toast. This made Jiang Tian feel a faint sense of gratification, and he sighed ruefully. Shen Lu and his wife's son could already learn to walk, and he looked just like Shen Lu. Although Shen Li's shares in many consortiums were almost all plundered when the monsters wreaked havoc on the earth, and he was now only a middle-level person, he was still very satisfied with everything in front of him. This was a very happy family. Being with these simple people, Jiang Tian felt that he had never been so calm since he was reborn. Memories came to his mind. These memories belonged to his previous life, when he hadn't been taken away by the immortal monarch and set foot in the central galaxy. At that time, the stars in the sky were just theoretical stars in his eyes. They didn't know how prosperous the cultivation civilization was there and how deep and terrifying the sea of stars was. In his previous life, Jiang Tian was like an ignorant child. For the next few days, Shen Lu and his wife accompanied Jiang Tian to play in Linzhou. On this day, Tang Linglong received a call saying that Mr. Tang Guizhu was critically ill and was on his deathbed. Jiang Tian, Tang Linglong, and their daughter went to visit the Tang family. Tang Guizhu was already very old. Although he had taken a lot of elixirs over the years, it was still difficult to beat fate. He was already on the verge of death. Of course, with Jiang Tian's mana, he could still prolong his life if he forcefully used it. However, Tang Guizhu did not allow Jiang Tian to do so. "My physical body has already decayed. Even if I forcefully extend it, I won't be able to last long. I'll have to trouble teacher Jiang to do it again. Let's just leave it to fate." Tang Guizhu was very open-minded. He held Jiang Tian's hand and said softly. Now, the 6 paths of reincarnation had been established. Yi Tianren was in charge of the reincarnation of Yin souls. Those who had meritorious deeds, even if they died, had a chance to continue their consciousness. They could either enter the underworld and become a ghost cultivator's messenger of death, or they could be received by the messenger of death and be reincarnated. Sure enough, Jiang Tian saw a ghost cultivator's messenger of death. He was already waiting in the ward. However, he was a ghost cultivator and his mana was not bad. If he wasn't a cultivator like Jiang Tian, ordinary people wouldn't be able to see him. At the moment when Tang Guizhu's physical body died, the ghost cultivator's messenger of death used a magic tool to hook Tang Guizhu's soul. He came to a paper boat and carefully nourished it with the magic tool. Then, he sat on the paper boat and crossed the sky with him. About 10 minutes later, in the delivery room of Lin Zhou's First People's Hospital, there was a loud and clear cry of a baby. The family immediately cheered. When the baby was carried out by the nurse, they all scrambled to surround him. This family was a rich family. Moreover, they had already embarked on the path of cultivation. In such a family, if it wasn't for the fact that the baby's fate was full of misfortune, he shouldn't have suffered too much. The baby looked around curiously. Although his eyes were very pure, there was actually a trace of age in them. However, this age quickly passed away, and he once again became confused and ignorant. He's finally gone. Jiang Tian retracted his gaze and sighed softly. Tang Guizhu was once a giant. He had made contributions in both the military and the martial arts world. Yi Tianren and the messengers of death of the underworld wanted to help him reincarnate. They used their mana to nourish him and deliberately protect the memories of his previous life. However, they still didn't succeed. At least, they didn't succeed completely. Jiang Tian rebuilt the underworld and reconstructed the reincarnation cycle in order to use the experiences and memories of the deceased's previous life. However, this 6 paths of reincarnation was, after all, man-made. There were still various loopholes and flaws. The success rate was less than 1%. At this moment, there was only a very faint wisp of remnant soul in the baby's mind. Furthermore, as his memories grew, his past memories might very well be completely suppressed and vanish into thin air. Ah, what is life and what is death? Hearing the sorrowful cries of the Tang family, recalling Tang Guizhu's life, and hearing the joyous chatter of the newborn family, full of anticipation for the baby's future, Jiang Tian sighed softly. Was the baby now another Tang Guizhu? I think it's unfair to that child. The strange man revealed a disdainful expression and snorted coldly. He was originally a brand new life. Why did you forcibly inject the memories of an old man into him? Fortunately, although he is a branch, when the old tree dies in the future, he will be a new tree. Kang Te-chu, you are not a mighty figure, but you want to imitate the actions of a mighty figure. You want to manipulate the fate of others and use their lives as chess pieces. Isn't that the pot calling the kettle black? What is life? What is death? Jiang Tian sighed again, as if comprehending. It's very simple. The eccentric scratched his dirty scalp. Suddenly, he pointed at a puddle under his feet and said, "It's raining heavily today. The rainwater is life, but when it enters this puddle, it becomes stagnant water. But is the water really dead? It will turn into clouds and become rain again in the future. This cycle repeats. But you can't say that the rain in the future is today's rain." Lightning once again lit up in Jiang Tian's heart when he heard the words of the vanishing self, eccentric. Moreover, this lightning was even brighter and longer lasting than before. Clusters of fog regarding the comprehension of life and death were completely illuminated. Jiang Tian's heart suddenly became bright. At this moment, he had almost succeeded in becoming immortal. His understanding of the mortal world and the great Tao of life and death had reached a very deep level. It could be said that if he wanted to enter the soul formation realm, the success rate would be at least 50%. However, he still didn't stop comprehending. Instead, he continued to experience the mortal world and the great Tao. Holding his daughter's hand, he strolled in Lin Zhou with the eccentric, enjoying the rare peace without any impatience. The strange man who suddenly disappeared pointed at a huge strange tree and said, "That's right. Jiang Tian, look at that tree. What is a leaf? What is a branch? What is a stem? What is a root? Is that a tree or a forest?" That tree was a very common banyan tree in the Lingnan area. It was originally very old, and with the nourishment after the recovery of spiritual qi, it had grown especially large. There were countless branches on the branches, and many of the roots hung down to the ground and sank into the soil. Jiang Tian saw that the real trunk of the tree had been riddled with holes by lightning, sun, and insects. There was not much vitality. However, the new roots were vigorous and full of vitality. Some of them had even torn off the roots and vines of the old tree and formed new independent trees. Yes. What is a leaf? What is a branch? What is a stem? What is a root? Is this a tree or a forest? Jiang Tian sighed. His eyes were shining. For the next few days, Jiang Tian and the eccentric sat under the tree to comprehend. They didn't meditate but stood and sat casually. It was very relaxing. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. The heavy rain poured down. Jiang Tian and the eccentric were drenched, but they still stayed under the big banyan tree, unwilling to leave. I have an answer. Whether it is the ship of Theseus, the cycle of life and death, or the primary and secondary branches, I have my own answer. Whether it is right or wrong, I have an answer. A few days later, Jiang Tian seemed to have understood something. His eyes were filled with joy, and he felt that his soul was much clearer. He got up, shook off the leaves on his body, chuckled, and walked into the distance. Chapter 18:20. The prosperity of the mortal world, the fresh lives, the companions, the support of each other, all kinds of fun and leisure. This life belongs to us. No matter what happens in the future, we can't let the grand cultivators take it away or disturb our state of mind. That was how Jiang Tian felt. I have a sword in my hand and I can kill all the gods and Buddhas in the world. Suddenly, Jiang Tian felt an unprecedented fighting spirit surging in his heart and he couldn't help but shout. At this moment, the last bit of doubt in his mind was also gone. His heart became lively again, as if the dust had been washed away. In the distance, Tang Linglong and Lu Yiting looked at each other and smiled. They seemed to have seen the old Jiang Tian come back. Then, Jiang Tian started to prepare for his departure from Earth. This time, Jiang Tian only took his daughter and the black dog with him. The universe seemed to be safe, but it was actually extremely dangerous. Apart from the orderly cultivation planet regions, most of the places were still chaotic barren areas. Besides, there were also a lot of universe beasts that weren't tamed by humans and were devouring energy and lives everywhere. Jiang Tian's trip this time had already gone beyond the Milky Way and several galaxies, which was much longer than the Beidou expedition to Earth. Such a long interstellar journey would be dangerous even for soul formation cultivators. Those cultivators would only be a burden. The black dog was a purebred purple golden true dragon. Even though it was weak and timid at the moment, it could definitely resist. In fact, Fu Heishui and Fu Heishui also wanted to go to the central galaxy with Jiang Tian to find the mother bat to continue their lineage. However, ancestral patriarch Shi Sha of the Ophiuchus constellation told the two brothers that there was a divine bat clan in the Ophiuchus constellation. There wasn't a single male in the clan and they had been living with the art of creation all these years. The two of them immediately ignored Jiang Tian and hurried there. Besides, many soul formation grand cultivators in the Little South Heaven planet region had also sent news that the immortal emperor had indeed fulfilled his promise. The graveyards of the deity fiends on all the planets had been adjusted and repaired. The violent planets like the third planet of the South Gate had also returned to normal. In the foreseeable future, the little southern sky star zone would be the most stable and suitable place for cultivation in the entire Milky Way. It was even equivalent to the edge of the central galaxy. Under such circumstances, bringing Earth cultivators like Tang Linglong or the new heavenly court into the central galaxy was not worth it. Moreover, Earth had become the cultivation core of the entire little southern heaven grand star zone. The many starry sky spirit guiding arrays set up by the immortal emperor were running like eternal stars. Vast and surging spiritual energy was drawn from the third South Gate, the Ophiuchus constellation, and the immortal demon stellar graveyard in the Fomalhaut constellation and continuously poured into Earth. The tide of spirit chi swept across the land, and the laws and great Tao continued to strengthen, nourishing this awakening ancient planet. Jiang Tian believed that Earth's peak period had yet to come. The current Earth was like a toddler learning how to walk. It was far from growing into its prime. But he couldn't not bring his daughter along. She was the continuation of Zhao Xueqing's life, and also his caring little jacket. Since she was born, Jiang Tian had rarely been with her, which made Jiang Tian feel very guilty. When Jiang Tian left, it was already after the spring festival. Nobody saw him off, so as to avoid the sadness of separation. And in those few months, Jiang Tian had almost traveled all over the world and said goodbye to everyone he needed to say goodbye to. The sound of firecrackers could be heard and the snow couldn't cover the lights. Jiang Tian had his hands behind his back and Jiang Beibei was riding a big black dog that looked like a pony, walking on the street of Sidoni together. There were pedestrians everywhere. Some were rushing to restaurants, while others were looking at the Dharma artifacts on the stalls on both sides of the street. The neon lights of the shops were reflected in the river, flowing slowly and bustling. People were coming and going, it was very lively. Jiang Tian was wearing a blue robe and a wooden hairpin. He walked slowly with his hands behind his back, looking around as if he had already blended in. Every day, Sidoni took in a huge amount of resources. Resources from countless planets came to Earth from all directions in the abandoned planet region, then went to other planets through Earth. There were many cultivators and nascent soul cultivators on Earth, as if they had returned to the era of overlords in the ancient times. Every step was a memory. Jiang Tian seemed to have returned to that time. He had fought side by side with Zhao Xueqing again and again, conquering and killing for this land. On the left, there were couples walking on the street, mothers holding their children's hands, young men and women hugging passionately under the blooming fireworks and gluttons looking for delicious food. They were so real and the mortal world was so real. Jiang Tian suddenly felt a bit reluctant. He also understood why Zhao Xueqing had decided to give in at the last moment and follow the immortal monarch. The mortals of this world loved delicious food, were passionate about life, chased after charm, calculated benefits, and thought about things. They had all kinds of emotions. They were not elegant and otherworldly. They were not like those so-called almighty giants whose hearts were as cold as iron and as steady as a rock. However, they lived like real people. This world was too beautiful. It was worth facing thousands of soldiers and horses, and it was also worth enduring humiliation and dragging out an ignoble existence. It would also become better in the future. That's strange. Since when did the abandoned planet region become so orderly? 3,000 years ago, I passed by the Ophiuchus region. The cultivators there would draw their swords at the slightest disagreement. There was no order to speak of. But when we went to the Ophiuchus region, they started to restrain the power and gradually formed a kingdom of cultivators. A middle-aged man in a blue Taoist robe stroked his beard as he looked around curiously. Yeah. The Milky Way is very far from the core of the universe. There's no civilization and order. It's always been called the abandoned planet region and the graveyard of the deities and demons. It's isolated from the world. How did it become so prosperous? I heard that they're forming the little Southern Sky Planet Region Federation group with the solar system as the core. The entire little Southern Sky Planet region will be peaceful forever, and communication and development will be the theme for a while. That's really rare. A girl in the prime of her youth spoke softly. She looked extremely charming and had a strange expression on her face. According to my investigation, a genius called Kang Taechu was born. Although he's a nascent soul cultivator, he has the power of a half-saint. He might be the reincarnation of a grand cultivator. Another young man in golden armor was apparently the core of the three. There seemed to be talismans flashing in his eyes as he spoke with a deep voice. What? Kang Taechu is so powerful. If our divine prince takes him in as a subordinate, won't we have another powerful general? The middle-aged man in a robe and the charming woman exclaimed together. Their eyes almost popped out in disbelief. They were masters from the Magpie Plume Planet province under the Saint Origin world. They took super lightspeed Dharma artifacts and even used wormholes. It took them 20 years to arrive on Earth. The Saint Origin world was located at the edge of the central galaxy and belonged to the core of the universe. It was a prosperous place with many geniuses and a few sacred-grade soul formation cultivators. However, they had never seen a monster with the power of a half-saint while being a nascent soul cultivator. While the three of them were talking, they didn't know that Jiang Tian had already walked past them with Jiang Bebe. Dad, I miss Grandpa and Grandma so much. Jiang Bebe said with tears in her eyes. Little master, don't cry. We'll be back when we become more powerful. Besides, the Black Jade Qilin will come and force me to be responsible for her. I'm so scared. The black-haired dog's words also contained a lot of information. Let's go. Jiang Tian looked back in the direction of the Tianqing school one last time. The next moment, a boat went straight into the Star Ocean. Destination: Saint Origin World in the Central Galaxy. Chapter 1821. In the lonely universe, the sky was filled with stars and a small boat was sailing. The black-haired dog sat at the end of the boat and looked at Earth. Suddenly, he said pitifully, "Master, I'm suddenly so scared. Will there be any terrifying astral beasts?" "Wow, Uncle Blackie, that's Mars, right? That's the ruins of deity, right? It's so vast. Ophiuchus, right?" Jiang Beibei, on the other hand, was very excited. She held Jiang Tian's sleeve and pointed at the constellations in the sky, trying to identify them with interest. "Ahem. Yes, is very accurate." A hint of tenderness flashed in Jiang Tian's eyes. The next moment, Jiang Tian took out the heaven-severing sword and gently swung it in the air like a paddle. "Okay." In silence, the boat traveled through the endless void, passing many planets from Earth to the edge of the solar system in a blink. The journey of the Voyager, which used to be the crystallization of human aerospace technology, took decades to complete, but it only took a second for the boat to travel. Jiang Tian skipped a light year or even a few light years every time he swam. Even the unsetting sun, which had the expertise of artifact forging and technology on Earth, would need dozens of days to travel from the solar system to the South Gate system. However, this time, it only took a few seconds for the boat to travel. Even the cultivators of the Big Dipper, who were the most advanced in space travel in the entire little Tiannan planet region, would be dumbfounded when they saw this speed. When they first traveled to Earth from the Big Dipper, it also took a few years for them to arrive. However, if Jiang Tian traveled from Earth to the Big Dipper, it would only take a few days. This terrifying speed had already surpassed that of a void-returned saint and was comparable to a Tao reunion perfected immortal. In the South Gate system, Jiang Tian stopped for a while and slowly approached the third planet of the South Gate. The array there had indeed been adjusted by the immortal Arch. Layers of deity arrays locked the deity's body and the nine-heaven deity seal kept suppressing and destroying it, turning the energy of the deity's body into spirit chi and dharma laws, which were then injected into Earth. "You're a man of your word." Jiang Tian had a faint smile on his face. No one knew what he was thinking. After that, Jiang Tian set off again. The boat carried Jiang Tian and the others like a leaf floating across a clear lake. They flew silently across the universe and arrived at the edge of the little South Heaven planet region in half a day. That speed was comparable to that of a Tao reunion perfected immortal. However, not even Tao reunion perfected immortals could do it as silently as Jiang Tian, without creating a dimension chaos hole or tearing apart the laws of heaven and earth. On the one hand, it was thanks to the boat. More importantly, Jiang Tian had already attained the three flowers at one's prominence and was a nascent soul that had perfected the limitless realm. The biggest difference between a nascent soul stage cultivator and a normal nascent soul stage cultivator is that they are like the children of gods that were born and raised by the universe. They are like the young masters of any place in this universe. No matter which star system one arrived in, they would instantly receive the recognition of the heavens and earth and obtain the support of their status. They would be able to naturally use the Dharma laws and Tao of this land, split the star ocean with a finger and cross the world with a step. Not only would they not be affected by the outside world when it comes to using the power of the heavens and earth, they would also receive the help of the heavens and earth. Even void-returning saints and Tao reunion perfected immortals might not be able to compare to them. Jiang Tian felt the subtle feeling of the close connection between the nascent soul and the world as he rode. Right then, his nascent soul was like an engine that burned eternally. The essence chi and dharma laws in the world were like endless energy that poured into the nascent soul. It didn't consume any of the nascent soul's dharma power and could still provide a terrifying amount of power for the boat. Mortals cultivated the outside world, while gods cultivated themselves. So, the nascent soul stage cultivators and soul formation cultivators in the mortal world would naturally receive the recognition of the heavens and earth in their own world. They could do whatever they wanted and were omnipotent. However, once they arrived in other star systems, they would often run into difficulties. Even sacred-grade soul formation cultivators could use their power in other star systems. After all, the Dharma laws were similar to the Grand Tao, but they still needed time. For example, Han Ming had only mastered the Dharma laws and Grand Tao after 2 years at the entrance of Earth. And yet, even sacred-grade nascent soul cultivators and soul formation cultivators would immediately lose the power to control the world once they entered the Fiend realm, the Ghost realm or the dimensional storms, where the Dharma laws and Grand Tao had changed drastically. They could only rely on their own true essence or the Dharma laws they had condensed, which greatly reduced their power. As for normal nascent soul cultivators and soul formation cultivators, they would even be destroyed by the Grand Tao laws when they arrived in such places. That was also the reason why the grand cultivators in the mortal world rarely went deep into the other worlds. After all, he was a grand cultivator who could do whatever he wanted in the mortal world. In the other worlds, even a few nascent soul cultivators of the alien races would be able to make him lose face. Soul formation cultivators, especially. Most of them had their own divine regions, where their Dharma power was almost infinite and they were immortal. Even nascent soul cultivators would be useless. Not even a saint who was a level higher would be able to kill a soul formation cultivator in the divine regions easily. And yet, once they left the divine regions and lost the power of Dharma laws, the so-called soul formation cultivators would only be powerful nascent soul formation cultivators. Such soul formation cultivators would have a high risk of losing their lives. They might even lose their lives if they were careless and encountered a disaster or a powerful beast. They were almost like gods in their own territories, but they would have to risk their lives in the other worlds and lose most of their power and power. Which cultivator would be willing to take such a risk to explore the other worlds? Why would they feel uncomfortable? In fact, not only the other worlds, Jiang Tian knew about it. In many ancient chaos planets and forbidden lands, there were laws and Taoist rules that forbade the use of the natural energies and laws of the outside world. As a result, most cultivators would lose 90% of their power. There were also many such forbidden areas in the universe. So, the top sacred grounds and celestial sects made their disciples practice body-tempering arts because they were afraid of falling into such a situation. The divine realm is obviously different. Nascent soul cultivators in the divine realm cultivate themselves. They combine their nascent soul, body and soul into one and develop their own world and universe. The Dharma power in their bodies will be endless without relying on external objects. So, even if they enter the other worlds or forbidden lands with different Dharma laws, they won't lose too much of their power. That way, they can quickly integrate into the worlds with different Dharma laws and still maintain their powerful combat abilities. Just like those divine beasts and monster beasts who rely on their own bodies and divine powers. More importantly, the nascent soul cultivators in the divine realm cultivate their inner world and their own universe, which is prepared to become the Hongmeng divine fruit of creation one day. They have different starting points and different horizons. They see different things and pursue different Dharma fruits. Jiang Tian was full of emotions. He had only cultivated a sacred grade nascent soul in his previous life, not a divine grade one. He had slowly learned those things after he formed the chaotic 9 orifices divine infant. In addition, he had gone through a lot to reach the immortal state in Hongmeng in his previous life and had a better understanding of the wonders of a divine grade nascent soul. His own Dharma laws were applicable everywhere and he would be recognized by the world immediately. Cultivating himself and forming an inner world meant that he would never lose control of the Dharma laws and he would always be invincible. Chapter 1822. In fact, even now, Jiang Tian could not figure out the immortal emperor's true attitude, whether he was an enemy or a friend. Moreover, even if he was an enemy, controlling the fate of Jiang Tian and Zhao Xueqing, he was not the real mastermind behind the scenes. He could only be regarded as a white glove of the supreme magnate. Whether he was forced to do it or did it on his own accord, and what kind of role he played, was still unclear. The real mastermind's strength and status had reached an unimaginable level. There were only a few dozen people who stood proudly at the top of the immortal world or the divine realm. I'm also ridiculous. In front of tigers and wolves, I still consider the cause and effect for them. No matter who the mastermind is, no matter whether the immortal emperor was forced to do it or did it on his own accord, as long as he wants to control my fate, I will still unsheath my sword and cut through all obstacles. Jiang Tian's eyes were cold, and he decided not to think about it. After all, it was not time to unsheath his sword. Before that, the mastermind and the immortal emperor had to carefully cultivate Zhao Xueqing and would not hinder his progress. The most important thing now was to improve his cultivation as soon as possible, until he was qualified to turn against the supreme magnate and unsheath his sword. Over the next few months, Jiang Tian continued on his journey, passing through many large galaxies that were like the Milky Way. He kept on getting closer to the central galaxy. He saw along the way. He passed by huge cultivation stars and saw countless ancestors in old linen clothes with animal skins around their waists, like the ancient Huaxia, working hard on the earth, slashing and burning, planting spiritual fields for the cultivators above them. The seasons changed all year round, and the spiritual seeds that were planted with great difficulty were all cruelly taken away by the cultivators in charge before they could eat a bite. If there was resistance, they would often be beaten into ashes with a spell, just like slaves. He saw that in a poor mortal family, there was a person who was tested to have talent for cultivation and was immediately taken in as a disciple by a cultivator of a higher sect. The entire family celebrated, and a banquet was held for the surrounding villages. They happily moved out of the cold, poor, and dangerous small village that they originally lived in and moved into the city. They were no longer subject to the exorbitant taxes of the sect and the attacks of low-level demon beasts. He saw high-level nascent soul stage cultivators sitting on countless spiritual fields and mineral deposits. Their luxurious residences towered into the clouds, and countless beautiful maids in light gauze clothes shuttled back and forth in the palaces, living a life of debauchery and debauchery. Their magic power was still strong, but their divine souls had begun to fall and decay. Although they claimed to be immortals, were they immortals or devils? He saw that in the aristocratic families, for the sake of fighting for the power of the family, the sons of the first wife and the sons of concubines would cause trouble. They saw their brothers as enemies and killed each other until rivers of blood flowed. In the end, the son of a concubine who obtained the upper hand killed his brother and father. He held the head in one hand and the family seal in the other. He raised his head to the sky and laughed complacently. It was as if what he killed was not his own family but a group of pigs and dogs, a nest of beasts. But there were also tears of blood rolling down his face. Was he despicable, or did he have his own difficulties and was just trying to survive? What kind of story was behind all of this? He saw, most of the time, Jiang Tian's face was expressionless. He just looked on coldly. He saw a beautiful girl from a poor family being bullied by a low-level cultivator. She was terrified and desperate, and only wanted to die. If his daughter didn't have the heart to let him attack, Jiang Tian would also casually strike down a bolt of lightning and shatter him into pieces. Countless other cultivators were shocked. Then, under the lead of an old Xiantian cultivator, they hurriedly bowed to the sky, begging for mercy, Senior. If Jiang Beibei couldn't bear to see the demon beasts harassing and attacking the city, he would also strike with his palm. His palm could destroy all life and destroy 1,000,000 miles. The golden light shone brightly, as if Buddha had slapped the five-finger mountain. The demon beasts naturally retreated in fear. The people in the city immediately cheered. Only the cultivators were frightened and didn't know what had happened. He passed by two countries fighting. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers were surrounding and killing each other. The cultivators on both sides were also fighting with all kinds of Dharma treasures and immortal arts. The sky collapsed and the earth cracked. The water in the lake evaporated. Jiang Tian also stopped and watched with interest. It was as if he was watching an exciting movie. He saw how the commanders of the two sides racked their brains to think about each other's moves and then came up with countermeasures. The immortal cultivators were in a killing frenzy. Even the high-level immortal cultivators did not hesitate to rummage through the treasures that they had accumulated over hundreds of years and throw them all into the fray. The mortal kings on both sides sat in their royal palaces in a daze. They could only watch as their countries were smashed into pieces and their people were plunged into misery and suffering. However, they were unable to resist at all. In the end, Jiang Tian couldn't stand it anymore. He slapped the cultivators on both sides into ashes and instantly stopped the war. Just like that, he walked and watched along the way. When he saw injustice, he would also help. Most of the time, he just flew past. The scenes he saw were not only on the planets he passed by, but also on the edge of the entire universe. High-level cultivators were rich. They sat on the wealth and power accumulated over hundreds of thousands of years and had the power to kill. Civilians and low-level cultivators without cultivation could only fight with wild dogs for food and fierce demon beasts for a place to live. The civilizations of human beings were like a dark forest. Every civilization was the prey and the hunter, and it was their responsibility to destroy each other. Outside the central galaxy, the edge of the universe was the wilderness. Human beings fighting in the universe and killing each other crazily had experienced the era of great competition in the wilderness countless years ago. Jiang Tian had even seen it in many other worlds or the edge of the universe in his previous life. He was not surprised at all. On one hand, it was true that the universe was too vast. The edge of the universe and the slightly orderly central galaxy were like a chasm. The tentacles of the central galaxy couldn't reach anywhere. Without a powerful ruler, it was like a group of dragons without a leader. But on the other hand, these immortal cultivators themselves did not want to change. After all, they cultivated diligently, and no one really hoped that they could ascend to the immortal realm. Most of them just wanted to live longer and better lives, and this required a huge amount of cultivation resources. Those cultivators obviously thought that they could live better lives by oppressing the cultivators and mortals at the bottom. But Jiang Tian knew that the prosperity of a civilization required the rise of countless cultivators at the bottom. One day, the power at the bottom would gather into a tinder that would illuminate the dark forest of the universe. By then, swords and plows, iron and blood, and countless generations of people would have to sacrifice their lives and blood. However, only in blood and fire could a new civilization and order rise brilliantly. He was very glad that under his intentional or unintentional arrangements and guidance, Earth had been on the right path from the very beginning. Cultivators fought for mortals, the strong bathed in blood for the weak supported the strong, and the strong could also be born from the weak. A few months later, Jiang Tian arrived at the edge of the storm belt, around the central galaxy. He put away the boat, held his daughter's hand and landed on a planet with life called the Zhoma planet. Looking inside the planet, one could see a black stream of water across the sky, enveloping the entire area, as if it could tear the space apart at any time. What was more terrifying was that the black curtain seemed to be made of space fragments and endless black holes, but it was still flowing slowly as if it were alive. Once inside, it could send a soul formation grand cultivator or even a planet to the depths of the unknown universe at any time. The storm belt was like a moat that surrounded and protected the eternal, dazzling central star river. Standing on the Zhoma planet and looking through the storm belt, Jiang Tian could already see a vast continent floating in the deep universe. The Saint Origin continent was in sight. Chapter 1823. The Tempest Belt was very chaotic. Space fragments were everywhere, and chaotic holes were everywhere. Space collapses and collapses happened from time to time. It was very dangerous. Even soul formation realm cultivators could be crushed into powder if they were not careful. Even their divine souls would be destroyed. Even the soul formation realm cultivators in the central galaxy would not cross it with their physical bodies. Many of them had died before. Fortunately, there were navigators in the star ocean who were proficient in the art of space. They opened up a passage with the experience they had accumulated over the years. This passage connected the Zhoma planet and the central galaxy. One could cross the Tempest Belt by using the Sky Stealer. Although the boat is a fairy artifact and can pass through the passage of the Tempest Belt instantly, the immortal monarch can sense my every move as long as I use this boat, even if he is in the Nine Heavens deity realm. So, I'm afraid I can't use it anymore. I have to find a team to pass through. Jiang Tian touched his chin and pondered. I want to get rid of the immortal monarch's control. Of course, I have to hide as much as possible. The next moment, he put the boat and the absolute heaven sword into the sky-devouring demonic gourd. Then, he used the art of deceiving the heavens and changed his appearance immediately. His figure had grown taller, and he was wearing an ordinary cyan robe. His appearance was even more ordinary, and he seemed to have a bit more vitality. His black hair had turned white, and there were a few more fine wrinkles at the corners of his eyes, making him look even more gloomy. In the end, even his aura was hidden, like a drop of water in the sea. It was difficult to distinguish and sense him. Then, he helped Jiang Beibei to change her appearance slightly. She had not started to cultivate yet. The Nine Heavens deity realm recognized people by their aura, so it was easy for her to hide. After doing all this, Jiang Tian raised his head and looked at the sky. His deep gaze seemed to be able to penetrate through the boundless starry river, and he saw a simple and unadorned palace. After thinking about it carefully, there didn't seem to be any problems. He stepped on an ordinary flying sword and rushed towards Jiayuan City. Jiayuan City was one of the largest cities on the Zhuma planet. There were many courier stations. Also, there were a few enemies of Jiang Tian's from his previous life. Jiang Tian wanted to get rid of them. In the Nine Heavens deity realm, purple qi came from the east. Celestial springs were everywhere. Orchids and celestial flowers were swaying. In an ordinary palace, the three words, Undying Hall, were floating above it. The immortal emperor, dressed in an old Taoist robe, was sitting in front of the furnace with his eyes closed. He seemed to be taking a nap or meditating. Beside him, two green-robed Dao children were fanning themselves. Suddenly, the immortal emperor opened his eyes and looked at the mortal world. Venerable emperor, it seems that person's aura has disappeared from the Zhuma star. A boy said curiously. The immortal emperor's eyes shone with a strange light. He pondered and pinched his fingers for a moment. Suddenly, he smiled and said with contempt and arrogance, "It doesn't matter. Let him be." He closed his eyes again and pointed his finger. The pill furnace opened, and brilliant light rushed into the heavens. A silver river fell down, covering a blazing star. The star fell as if it wanted to escape. However, that star was a fireball shaped like the sun and not a planet or a continent. It was terrifyingly hot and was so big that it seemed like it could fill up a light year. The space around it was distorted and collapsed. There seemed to be golden crows flying about inside. The two boys were trembling under the horrible pressure, but the sun couldn't get rid of the light. It became smaller and smaller, closer and closer, and finally fell into the furnace. The immortal emperor pointed his finger again and the lid of the furnace closed. It was quiet inside. This furnace of pills has been refined for 2,207 years, but it hasn't formed a core embryo yet. The two boys took a light breath. As the only fairy connecting the central galaxy and the entire southern fringe galaxies, the Zhuma star was very prosperous, and Jiayuan City was one of the most prosperous cities on this planet. Palaces and palaces were all over the city. Many cultivators flew through the sky on their flying swords. The sky was filled with dazzling lights. There were also crystal spaceships with mottled traces taking off and landing. They were loaded with minerals, materials, and specialties from various galaxies. They wanted to make a fortune through the station. Countless disciples of aristocratic families, elites of sects, and rogue cultivators from the fringe galaxies gathered here, hoping to enter the central galaxy. There were many space pirate gangs, caravans, and businesses all over the planet. There were hundreds of thousands of space coachmen, boatmen, armed escorts, guards, thieves, and robbers who were engaged in legitimate businesses. Even the lowest laborer had a cultivation level of the golden core stage. This was a place where good and bad people mixed together. Sun Nian was a person who made a living in the station. He was a peak stage nascent soul stage cultivator with a lifespan of more than 3,000 years. He used to be an ancestor-level figure on a planet in the fringe galaxies. However, because of his lust, he offended another half-divinity transformation stage cultivator, so he had to spend his whole life to make a living here. After working here for more than 200 years, he only controlled a few thousand cultivators, more than 100 flying horses, and several large carriages, which formed a Dragon Gate caravan company. In Jiayuan City, he was only a second or third-rate figure. Naturally, he couldn't be compared to the Tao ancestor he was on that planet, tyrannical and tyrannical. When the emperors of the human world saw him, they had to kowtow 3 times and 9 times. And yet, he was still very satisfied and even proud of himself. It was because he had reached the peak stage nascent soul stage from the first level of the nascent soul stage in just 200 years, which was more than 2,000 years of hard work on the home planet. As for the reason, it was because there were too many resources there. Heavenly materials and earthly treasures were everywhere and there were endless business opportunities. As long as one was willing to work hard, the cultivation resources accumulated in a year would be 100 times more than on the home planet. Besides, there were also many cultivation arts. On his home planet, people would fight to the death for a soul formation cultivation art. Being able to get guidance from a soul formation grand cultivator was like having smoke coming out of their graves. However, soul formation cultivators weren't rare in this place at all. There would be some popping up in bars and businesses from time to time. As long as you were good at reading people's faces, flattering them, and being humble and courteous, when the other party was in a good mood, it was very likely that they would casually give you some advice. Often, the problems that you couldn't solve even after pondering for 100 years on the ancestral planet would be easily solved. His foundation wasn't good enough, so he couldn't live on any planet in the central galaxy for a long time. However, sometimes, because he was transporting cultivators and goods, he could stay in the central galaxy for half a month and absorb precious spirit chi, which greatly improved his power. Early in the morning, Sun Nian had eaten some spirit grain porridge and was humming an unknown song. He stepped on his flying sword and flew to the sky above his Dragon Gate car dealership. Immediately, his subordinates bowed to him respectfully. "Good morning, Lord Sun." "Good morning, Heavenly Lord." Sun Nian felt a bit smug after hearing those greetings. Being addressed as Master meant that he had some status. Planet Juma was a place where all kinds of people lived. It was much more difficult to become an ancestral patriarch there than on the home planet. So, he put on airs and snorted as a greeting. "Heavenly Lord. You're just an itinerant cultivator from the countryside. How dare you pretend to be a big shot on planet Juma? Bah! You're just a bumpkin from a remote place. You kneel when you see a divine lord. How shameless can you be?" A mocking voice came. That person didn't try to hide it at all and was fearless. Hearing this voice, Sun Nian's mood instantly turned bad. His face sank, and an urge to kill surged in his chest. Chapter 1824. Sun Nian didn't need to look to know that it came from his nemesis, Chen Xiong, who was also the owner of another large car dealership in Jiayuan City. Because they were competing for business, it was needless to say that they didn't get along well. Chen Xiong was now the outer elder of the Taihao sect in Saint Origin World and was a local. Chen Xiong's current cultivation was lower than Sun Nian's, he was merely a nascent soul cultivator. However, Chen Xiong had a backer, and his connections extended far and wide. Thus, Sun Nian didn't dare to offend Chen Xiong in the slightest even when Chen Xiong bullied him all day long. However, Sun Nian hated Chen Xiong to the core. If someone had told him that he could completely disappear from the world in exchange for all his wealth, Sun Nian might have hesitated for a moment, but if he had changed his mind and only asked for half of his wealth, he would have agreed without hesitation. Sun Nian didn't dare to refute Chen Xiong's mockery in front of everyone, and he felt extremely aggrieved. However, the arrival of a guest resolved his embarrassment in time. The guest's hair was white and his eyes were gloomy. He seemed to be only at the nascent soul realm and looked around as if it was his first time here. He didn't seem to be a big shot. Moreover, he was standing on a spiritual treasure flying sword and holding a little girl who had no cultivation at all. What was even stranger was that he had a big black dog with him. The dog's bloodline also seemed to be very ordinary. This was Jiang Tian's car dealership in disguise. It's hard to do business. Why don't you have a fat sheep for me to slaughter? Sun Nian knew that this wasn't a big deal, but to ease the awkwardness, he still flew over and greeted with a cheerful face. Fellow cultivator, are you going to the Central Galaxy? Do you want to know more about the Dragon Gate car dealership? Yes, I'm going to Saint Origin World in the Central Galaxy. What's the price? Jiang Tian asked with a smile. Of course, he had an impression of Sun Nian. Although this person was very treacherous, he wasn't an evil person. 100 million low-grade crystals. Sun Nian observed Jiang Tian for a while and was sure that he was a cultivator from a peripheral planet. He must have come from an extraordinary background. When he first came here, he seemed to be an early-stage nascent soul realm cultivator. His bone structure and aptitude were nothing special. Such a cultivator would not be able to establish himself in the Central Galaxy. He must have come here to broaden his horizons so that he could go back to his home planet and show off. Therefore, Sun Nian did not care much about him. However, such cultivators were also the most vain. They liked to puff themselves up at their own cost. They were good spendthrifts. Generally, as long as they were complimented, these local rich people would not only happily pay the carriage fee, but also give a lot of tips. Therefore, it was a very profitable business for the car dealership. However, he was also afraid that this business would be snatched away. Therefore, in order to avoid being noticed, he used his divine sense to inform Jiang Tian and specifically instructed him, let's go to the carriage shop and talk. Everything can be discussed. 100 million low-grade crystals. Jiang Tian didn't frown at all and said, if it's converted into top-grade crystals, it'll only cost 1,000 pieces, right? Then, he patted the sky-devouring demonic gourd, and a bulging bag half the height of a person appeared on the ground. Then, he said indifferently, is it enough? This, Sun Nian knew at first glance that the crystals were of extremely high quality. The spiritual qi inside was extremely condensed, and there were even laws lingering around them. He hurriedly said, it's enough. It's enough. However, he looked at the opposite side worriedly and cautiously reminded him, my friend, there are all kinds of people here. You must always remember that wealth can move people's hearts. Don't reveal it easily. As he spoke, he was so tired that his face turned red. He panted heavily and put Jiang Tian's crystals into his storage ring with difficulty. Then, he handed Jiang Tian a talisman receipt and said, we'll leave on time tomorrow morning. Jiang Tian took the receipt that was surrounded by magic power and was about to leave. Suddenly, a hearty laugh came from the opposite side. My friend, is this your first time in Jieyuan City? How should I address you? Where are you from? I'm Chen Xiong, the owner of Zongtian car dealership. Amidst these words, a robust man with a full beard, a tall figure, luxurious clothes, and various protective and soul-nourishing magic artifacts that flickered with the light of treasures, stepped through the air and cupped his fists towards Jiang Tian. My friend Chen, nice to meet you. I'm Siqing Cultivator, from the Black Sun Star Zone. My roots are just a small sect that is not worth mentioning. It's indeed my first time here. Please take care of me. Jiang Tian cupped his fists slightly, but a hint of coldness flashed in his eyes. Chen Xiong, an outer elder of the Haotian sect, ran a car dealership business. In his previous life, Jiang Tian had suffered countless losses and humiliations because of him. In his previous life, after the immortal monarch brought Jiang Tian to the Central Galaxy, he directly taught him a set of basic cultivation methods and left him to fend for himself in the Saint Origin world. For hundreds of years, the immortal monarch didn't care about him at all. At that time, Jiang Tian was just a rogue cultivator. In his early years, he lived a precarious life in the Saint Origin world as a coolie, porter, farmer, and alchemy apprentice. At that time, Chen Xiong was an extraordinary person. He had returned to the headquarters of the Haotian sect in the Saint Origin world. He was famous and always took pleasure in humiliating Jiang Tian. After Jiang Tian reached the foundation establishment stage, he wanted to go back to Earth to visit his old friends. However, Chen Xiong seemed to have changed his attitude. He warmly helped Jiang Tian and called him brother. In fact, Jiang Tian later found out that it was all a conspiracy. With the Haotian sect's strength, it was impossible for them to reach Earth. Chen Xiong only wanted to relieve Jiang Tian's vigilance, but secretly contacted several Golden Core Hall masters and elders to kill Jiang Tian together with the intention of stealing the treasure. During the battle, Jiang Tian crazily swallowed pills to temporarily increase his cultivation and achieve the ultimate counterattack. However, he also suffered heavy injuries and had to cultivate for another 30 years to return to his peak state. At this time, Chen Xiong should be tempted by the treasure again. However, how could the current Jiang Tian be the inexperienced little lamb that could be slaughtered by others? So its fellow Taoist Xiqing. Chen Xiong's face was full of enthusiasm. He smiled and said, "You're new here, so you don't have a place to stay." The old man is an outer elder of the Haotian sect in the Saint Origin world. Not only do we have a car dealership, but we also have a business and a hotel. Since you found the Dragon Gate car dealership, I won't compete with Sun Nian for business. With that, he shot a warning glance at Sun Nian. Sun Nian's eyes drooped as a forced smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Chen Xiong seemed to be very satisfied with Sun Nian's submissive attitude. However, if you're looking for a trading company, I'm not trying to boast. The trading company of our Haotian sect has always been fair and honest. In particular, the tranquil soul pacifying powder, made by the elder of the alchemy room, is a must-have for crossing the storm star belt. Otherwise, the spiritual interference alone is enough to make you suffer and destroy 1/10 of your cultivation. As for the hotels, the Haotian sect also has a few in Jiayuan City. They're all equipped with spirit-gathering arrays and guarded by several golden core and nascent soul cultivators. No one dares to disturb them. He winked his eyes coquettishly and said patiently, "There are even some beautiful stoves who are adept at dual cultivation. Many of them are from the declining nobles of the Central Galaxy. They are very beautiful and have excellent bone structures. Not only can I have a good time, but I can also improve my cultivation. Why not? Really? I'm tired from the journey. I really need to wash off the dust." Jiang Tian's eyes lit up. He pretended to be very interested and squeezed the hand of Jiang Beibei, who was glaring at him. During the journey, Jiang Tian and the big black dog had taught the little girl some common knowledge about cultivation. She had a rough idea about what a cultivation furnace was. "Fellow Taoist, if you're interested, I'll take you there now." Chen Xiong's eyes flashed with a trace of treachery. He chuckled, grabbed Jiang Tian's wrist, and flew into the sky. Chapter 1825. Xiqing, remember to check carefully. Don't miss the time. Sun Nian also reminded him, but then he shook his head and heaved a sigh. Perhaps Jiang Tian's experience was too shallow, and he might not have checked the ticket carefully. Sigh. Let's not talk about the perilous Central Galaxy. Every year, countless heroes and talents in the peripheral galaxies perish at the entrance of the Central Galaxy and turn into dry bones. He heaved a sigh helplessly. Ah, I've earned 100 million low-grade crystals for nothing. I can sell that spot again. I'm so happy. However, the next second, his regret was replaced by joy. He went back to the garage, closed the door and set up a restriction array. Then, he checked the crystals carefully. The scenery before Jiang Tian's eyes changed rapidly. Suddenly, black mist filled the air and filled the surrounding 10 miles of space, making it impossible for him to see the outside world. A moment ago, it was still bustling with noise and excitement, and in the next moment, it was as if he had arrived in another world. A small grotto heaven. Jiang Tian said with a half-smile. I'm Xia Yunting, an outer elder of the Haotian sect. Nice to meet you. A beautiful woman with a voluptuous figure dressed in palace attire walked out. She was tall and slender, and her waist was as slender as a snake. Her long and slender legs were faintly discernible under the gauze dress. She was a nascent soul realm cultivator, but she was at the peak of the 9th stage nascent soul realm. This guy doesn't seem to be as old as he looks. His skin is tender and smooth. He must be delicious. His body belongs to me. It's a good time to eat it. In addition, there was also a bald monk. He wore a blood-red monk robe, but he had a pair of demonic vertical pupils. His gaze was cruel and greedy as he looked at Jiang Tian. It was as if Jiang Tian was a piece of fat meat. He would occasionally stick out his tongue and make a 1111 sua sua sound. The blood monk, Tu Ju, was an outer elder of the Haotian sect. He was also a peak stage nascent soul cultivator. In addition, there were more than 10 early-stage nascent soul cultivators, all of whom were looking at Jiang Tian with malicious smiles. Almost all the people who had tried to kill Jiang Tian in his previous life were there. However, they had arrived 100 years earlier. Is fellow cultivator Xia a dual cultivation vessel? Why did he find someone else? I'm too embarrassed to do that in public. Jiang Tian said with a smile that was not a smile. Xia Tingran immediately revealed a mocking smile and looked at Jiang Tian as if she was looking at an idiot. Daoist Xiqing, she's not dual cultivating with you. She wants to kill you. Chen Xiong laughed sinisterly and said calmly, who told you to bring so many crystals? If you want to blame someone, blame your shallow experience in the martial world for not knowing the dangers of the world. It was obvious that this wasn't the first time he had done such a thing. He didn't feel the slightest bit of guilt or psychological burden. Instead, he was immensely proud of himself. I can't believe that a bumpkin from a remote place like the Black Sun Domain has so many crystals. It's not something an ant like you can enjoy. Take the initiative to erase the divine sense imprint on the gourd so that we can take it. When we kill you later, we'll give you a quick death. Xia Yunting looked down at Jiang Tian and said coldly, as if killing Jiang Tian without torturing him was already an extrajudicial mercy. Ha, the Haotian sect is still so overbearing. A mocking smile appeared on Jiang Tian's face. If it were in his previous life, Jiang Tian would only be a foundation establishment cultivator 100 years later, a lowly itinerant cultivator. When he encountered a sect like the Haotian sect, he would tremble in fear and avoid them. However, in this life, Jiang Tian could destroy the Haotian sect by lifting his hand if he wanted to. Even though the Haotian sect was located in the central galaxy, it was only a third-rate sect in the divine origin world after all. It only had one soul formation divine lord and he was just an ordinary soul formation cultivator. It was like there were weak students in the big cities who were even weaker than the divine soul formation cultivators in the savage lands. What? You don't want to admit defeat? Then I'll send you to hell. Blood monk Tu Ju gave a loud shout and his nascent soul suddenly rumbled. His spirit embryo trembled and demonic aura gushed out. A strange snake apparition rose behind his back and opened its bloody mouth. Its fangs were exposed and surrounded by a sea of blood. Corpses and bones floated up and down. It looked like it was filled with baleful aura and was threatening Jiang Tian. Big Black, eat them. Jiang Tian suddenly ordered coldly. Okay. I've been eating spirit pills every day. My taste buds are getting bland. Finally, I can taste something new. Big Black's eyes were filled with excitement. Saliva flowed out of his mouth and a human-like smile appeared on his face. He growled, which was actually a dragon's roar. Suddenly, he jumped out and rushed into the crowd. Roar! He shook his body and turned into a dog with a dragon's head. The dragon's head expanded out of proportion and was like a small mountain. He bit toward blood monk Tu Ju. What? He has the bloodline of the dragon race. Tu Ju was astonished. The strange snake Dharma idol swelled, and rushed toward the large black dog. However, it was completely useless. It was directly snapped in half by the large black dog's bite. Immediately afterward, the massive dragon's mouth covered the sky and swallowed Tu Ju whole. Even his nascent soul, physical body, and divine sense were all chewed into pieces. At this moment, more than a dozen flying swords and a giant axe whistled and slashed toward Big Black's back. Big Black didn't even turn his head. With a swing of his tail, the flying swords and giant axe were all turned into dust. Several cultivators were all swept away and crashed into the mountain wall. Their skin and flesh were lacerated, and they died. Although Xia Yunting and Qin Xiong didn't die on the spot, they were also very miserable. They were knocked a few miles away and showed fear. For a moment, they hesitated and were in a dilemma. Xia Yunting's spirit embryo was shaking from the impact. Cracks appeared on her nascent soul, and blood flowed out of the web between her thumb and forefinger. She quickly fled out of the small grotto heaven and said in horror, "Qin Xiong, what's going on? Didn't you say that they came from the Black Sun Star region? This grotto heaven is completely under our control. Why is the law that I struck out broken by this evil dog? Die!" Big Black suddenly rushed over and slapped down with his claws. A dragon claw with a radius of 1 mile appeared. Its scales were heavy, and its bone hook was sharp. It shone with golden light and was surrounded by purple gas. It was as heavy as a mountain. Xia Yunting's beautiful eyes were wide open. She didn't even have time to beg for mercy before she was smashed into a meat patty. Until the moment of her death, her charming face was still full of shock and fear, as if she couldn't believe that she was killed by a small itinerant cultivator from a remote place. The large black dog opened its mouth and sucked, swallowing her flesh and spiritual power into its stomach. "Senior, please spare my life. I didn't recognize the real dragon. I shouldn't have plotted against you." At this time, Qin Xiong was so scared that he fell to his knees and trembled. He didn't dare to resist at all. Jiang Tian's inconspicuous big black dog was comparable to the strength of an ordinary soul formation cultivator. As for Jiang Tian, he was probably even stronger. Even in the Saint Origin continent, he was a giant at the level of a sect master or family leader. He was just an ordinary nascent soul cultivator. How could he be a match for Jiang Tian? A lifetime of hunting geese, only to be pecked by the geese. This time, I really kicked a steel plate. Qin Xiong wailed in his heart. He had never thought that Jiang Tian, a cultivator from a remote star region, would be so powerful. If he was given another chance, he swore that he would never provoke Jiang Tian. He would stay as far away from him as possible. "Senior, this junior is willing to contribute all of my family's wealth to young master. I am willing to be young master's cow and horse. I have quite a lot of connections in Saint Origin World and Juma Star. I know everything big and small. I am willing to serve young master." Qin Xiong roared with tears and snot running down his face. "You don't know as much as I do." Jiang Tian's face was full of sarcasm. He slapped down without hesitation. Chapter 1826. Boom. Qin Xiong turned into dust and even his divine soul was destroyed. Jiang Beibei watched from the side. Her beautiful eyes didn't show much emotion, showing a calmness that didn't match her age. She seemed to be used to killing and already knew the cruelty of the cultivation world. Alas, those guys from the Haotian sect set up the small grotto heaven array. Normal cultivators, even soul formation cultivators, wouldn't be able to find it if they didn't search carefully. However, you've done too much, and I found some clues. In a remote forest outside the city, Sun Nian hid his energy and covered his face with a Dharma artifact. He blended in with the surrounding vegetation and rocks. He secretly looked at a point in the void with burning anticipation in his eyes. He came here to scavenge. Normally, after the Haotian sect finished their business, they would disperse the small grotto heaven array and leave behind some Dharma artifact fragments. Although they were not worth mentioning for the giants, they were still a small fortune for a nascent soul cultivator like him. It was not easy for cultivators from the peripheral galaxies to establish a foothold here. Sun Nian had been thrifty and diligent, expanding his sources of income and reducing his expenditure. That was how he had accumulated his current wealth. After a while, the void trembled and the light changed. So fast this time. It only took less than half an hour. Sun Yan's eyes lit up. Then, he frowned and shook his head. Alas, that fellow cultivator Siqing is still too weak. They got it so fast. Idiot, I reminded him again and again to check the tickets, but he didn't. However, he was shocked to see that the one who stepped out of the void was not Qin Xiong and the others from the Haotian sect, but a middle-aged cultivator from a remote galaxy. Blood was flowing under his feet and there were corpses everywhere. Qin Xiong, Xia Yunting, and the blood monk were nowhere to be seen. In an instant, Sun Nian was so shocked that his eyes almost popped out. How could he be so powerful that he killed Qin Xiong and the others? Jiang Tian seemed to have sensed Sun Nian's gaze. He looked up and smiled at Sun Nian. Sun Nian immediately looked away as if he had seen a poisonous snake. He wasn't happy about the death of Qin Xiong at all. Instead, he felt sad about the death of his enemy. He was now fully aware that this young man wasn't some fat sheep. He was clearly the king of hell. As for Qin Xiong and the other brats, they had actually thrown themselves into the palms of these kings of hell. They were really seeking their own deaths. Actually, when he saw Jiang Tian, how could he not have the intention to kill and seize the treasure? But he knew that Qin Xiong would surely intercept him, so he simply didn't make a move. Jiang Tian didn't inform Sun Nian. Instead, he directly returned to Jiayuan City and found an inn to settle down. He believed that Sun Nian wouldn't speak carelessly. Carelessly speaking would cause more trouble, which might lead to the Haotian sect's interrogation and revenge. Furthermore, Jiang Tian had removed the outer house elder that the Haotian sect had placed on Zhuma planet, which would greatly affect the business of his caravans, businesses, and hotels. This coincidentally gave Sun Nian the opportunity to expand his territory. The night passed uneventfully. The next day, Jiang Tian arrived at the Dragon Gate carriage depot at the appointed time. He immediately saw many cultivators waiting to depart. The first group of people were dressed luxuriously. Most of them were disciples of aristocratic families and sect elites from various star areas. They were surrounded by people around them. The star area they were in wasn't far from the central galaxy. There were only 3 to 5 star areas that were separated by the Milky Way. According to their conversation, many of them had soul formation cultivators as their backers. Some even had connections with some forces in the central galaxy. Their families or sects would provide them with a large amount of heavenly materials and earthly treasures. Some even sent soul formation cultivators as guards to escort them to enter the central galaxy. For example, Yang Wu was the most conspicuous one. He came from a large cultivation planet in the extragalactic star area that bordered the central galaxy. His sister was married to the hall master of a second-rate sect in the Divine Origin continent. Even though his foundation was ordinary and he was only in the Golden Core realm after cultivating for 100 years, he was still recruited by that sect. The second group of people were the cultivators around Yang Wu. These cultivators came from all kinds of backgrounds. Most of them came from the central galaxy. Although they were located at the edge, they were definitely not as desolate as the Milky Way. Some of them were elites of their sects and had powerful backers. Some had extraordinary backgrounds. The third group of people were like Jiang Tian. They came from the real star areas that were considered barren. Most of their faces were covered in dust, and their appearances were old. There were even injuries on their bodies, and their auras were dried up. After all, they were too far away from the central galaxy. Even though they were nascent soul cultivators, they were still very weak after arriving there. They were timid and didn't dare to talk. They looked at Yang Wu and the others vigilantly. They talked and laughed, not wanting to miss any information. They were in sharp contrast to the arrogant Yang Wu and the others. But as time went by, this group of cultivators also started to talk slowly. They found cultivators from the same or neighboring star areas and talked about their backgrounds, hoping to make some friends. After all, the central galaxy was too dangerous. They didn't know anyone there and they didn't have any background. Everyone wanted to have more friends. At the same time, Jiang Tian was suddenly attracted by 3 men and a woman. The man in the lead was wearing a simple and natural robe. His beard was as dense as steel needles and he looked serious. He walked in the front with his hands behind his back and a long sword on his back. Anyone who knew what was going on would be able to tell that the scabbard was made of the thinnest skin on the back of the silver-bearded golden-eyed flood dragon. Although this kind of dragon was only a nascent soul beast, it was extremely rare and lived in the forbidden area of the universe. Only peak-stage nascent soul cultivators would dare to enter. As for the man and the woman, the man was wearing a white robe. He was tall and straight, like an unsheathed sword. He was already a peak-stage nascent soul cultivator and a sacred-grade nascent soul cultivator. The woman was wearing a red dress. Her waist was as thin as a snake and her long legs were wrapped in a short skirt. Her body was burning like a ball of fire. But her face was delicate and her black hair was like ink. She lowered her head slightly and blinked her big eyes, like a girl next door. The people around Jiang Tian couldn't help but hold their breaths. Even Yang Wu couldn't help but turn around to take a few glances. When Jiang Tian saw the two of them, there was a hint of coldness and mockery in his eyes. It's Yan Beifei and Zhao Feifei. This middle-aged man is Yan Beitang's father, Yan Nanxian. According to the time, Yan Beifei should be an elite disciple of the Tian Luo sect and Yan Nanxian should be the sect leader of the Tian Luo sect. They should be traveling in the central galaxy or completing a sect mission. 200 years later, Yan Nanxian will be the sect leader and Yan Beifei will be the Zongzi. They were old friends. And they had a grudge against each other. He just didn't expect to meet them so soon.